Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick, author, idiot, and loin streamer. And today we bring to you another book review of another comic, second in the Isom series by Eric July. And I am again accompanied by another part of my soul.
Are you leaving this up for me? So I was like, oh wait, shit, I gotta.
Yeah, I was like, how do I throw it to Monty?
It's me. It's Monty. Hello. I'm back for round 2 of Isom. I'm very excited to be here. I have a lot of things to say. I've got 10 pages of notes, and we're gonna cover as much as we possibly can in a godly amount of time. So, okay. All right.
Before we get started, the number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lamai, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt. You write a short story using that prompt. In the first Monday video of that month, we bask in the creativity of this community because you guys are brilliant and hilarious. And I think the mango tree has been my favorite month so far. The second way,
wild.
The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book coming out, and this includes comics because we recently just featured the first comic book feature on the channel. So if you have an indie book that is coming out or is out, submit the first chapter and the cover, and they'll be read here at a random interval on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, because that is the hardest part once the book is out there, really, just awareness. And the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, you can get them anywhere that you get books, including your local library and OneDrive. So check those out. You might get pain or you might get not pain. I don't want to make any promises.
You might be forever ignorant, or you might expand your mind.
Or you might suffer. You know what? I don't put it above it that I can make people suffer.
It's okay. I think anybody can. I know I can. God, I've got a werewolf role play.
With that said, let's get into this. So I feel like it was a couple months ago at this point.
It's been about a couple months.
We read Isom One together because we were having difficulty finding people that were actually talking about the book. Honestly, a lot of the reviews were like, the packaging is so great. The pages are so great.
Look at this.
Was like, when you were like, what is the book about though? What happens in the book? We could not find people talking about it. Now, that's not to say they don't exist now, but when we were looking at it then, we couldn't find it. So then we read the book. And in order to give the book a fair shake, we both personally believe that you read through the arc to see what was set up, then how stuff plays out, because you can't get a full look at the picture and what an author has set up without reading basically the whole arc of what's being set up. That's the reason why I read His Name Was Augustin 1 through 6, even though I didn't really like what was going on and every book got perpetually worse. I wanted to see the payoff. I wanted to see what got used and what didn't, so that I fully understood or attempted to understand what the author was doing.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here with Eric July's second Isom story, and then we'll be here with the third. Because there were a lot of things set up with the first book. And if you go back and look at our review for that, we saw things with like Avery's anger issues and why he quit, and his hot-headedness and his relationship with Darren, that we could see different ways for his character to grow. Yeah. None of those were brought to book 2.
No. In fact, it's really weird. We open with, and this book also does the same thing that the first book did, which is I feel like opens with a character introduction that is not the main protagonist of this story. We don't open with Avery. We open with Avery's sister Altana. And then we get introduced to a new character. This is going to be a running theme throughout the entirety of this second book. And anything that had been set up in the first issue really doesn't get paid off in the second one. Not from what I could see. Like there's a lot of
say paid off. It's not even carried in. Like it completely forgot what was in the previous book.
No, Jasmine only gets mentioned one time, and it's just by name. We don't even see her. Nobody else talks about her. Nobody. It's like she's disappeared, which is really bizarre.
I think a great way for this book to start would have just been if you were with, so Avery's section He's with the clothing maker that he ended
Cedric.
with in the first book. So I think the best way to open this book, or a good way, not the best way, because there are many ways it could have started. Yeah. But I think one of the ways that this could have started, and also been a great way to not necessarily have had to read the first book, if you wanted to make it, you can pick it up anywhere, is to have had him talking to the clothing maker, the tailor, and they were in the dressing room, and he was like, hey, I'm glad to see you back. I'm glad to see that you want to do this again. But what made you change your mind? And so then
Avery or where have you been?
And Avery could do a recap of, well, my sister called me and needs me, and I just couldn't shrug her off. And so then there could be a very brief recap that told us what was in the previous book and why he was coming back specifically. And then that meant that new readers could have picked up the book and just gone with it. And then if they wanted more detail, they could go read the first book.
Agreed. I think that's a good idea. But also another thing too, like, we don't know how long Avery has been out of the superhero game, so to speak, because it goes when we finally get to that point where we meet Avery again. It doesn't actually show him sitting with Cedric until after the events of what made him quit being a superhero unfold, and then it cuts to present time. It says some years ago, so I don't really know when and where or how long Avery has been out of the game. Like, I really don't understand, why it's been as long. Like how long has it been?
And that's kind of a constant theme that ran throughout the first book and the second book, is in the dialogue and in the scenes that it portrays. It's kind of vague in everything that it portrays. And it's not vague in like, I'm trying to keep a secrets from you kind of way. It feels more like the author is trying to not commit to anything, so that you can't say, hey, you broke what you did before because you said this and then you did this. It's either that, or it's the author has no idea where they're going with this. And so then they just kind of made really vague dialogue to be like, I have an idea, but I don't want to say this happened for sure or what it was.
Which, is really funny because it goes against the whole idea of the rippaverse ethic, where there's a whole section about canon and continuity. None of the continuity from the first book follows over into the second one. None of it. Like, at all. It's very, very weirdly paced, and it was jarring to read it, actually, but I guess we should talk about what happened.
So we open with Avery's sister, Altona, talking to a coworker about some kind of vague angsting. And
vague project.
Something. It was so vague, going, oh, you didn't seem concerned about this thing before. Your tuition was a little late. Just like, there's literally nothing specific about anything going on. It's always vague. And the coworker is just like, my bad, I'll email you later. It doesn't really give the reader anything to be grounded in when it is this vague, and it feels like a forced vagueness for the sake of either suspense or because the author hasn't decided on any elements in which to insert to stick with, so then later he can be like, aha, and throw this on you.
Aha!
Now that doesn't really work to build suspense or mystery, because in a suspense or mystery, you have to lay the pieces for the readers to see, so then when you reveal the puzzle later, they can look back and go, oh, I see what you were doing. Or if they solve it before you get there, they feel smart. My go-to example is always The Sixth Sense.
Oh, yeah. That's classic.
Because it subtly lays out that the guy is dead the whole time. But you might not notice if you weren't paying attention. And then you get to the end and there's the reveal. And so then if you weren't told previously, then you watch it again and you're like, oh, I see all of the signs. Then you go back.
You see all the signs. I loved that. Especially, I think somebody did like a video essay on it. And they showed where when he meets his wife at dinner and he's late, or he thinks he's late, he doesn't know he's dead. And he sits down in the chair. He doesn't pull that chair out. And the way he fits into it is so uncanny because he doesn't move it. The table doesn't move. It's just kind of in there because those chairs, if there's nobody sitting in them, they're pulled into the table. So he just sat down in a chair without pulling it out or anything. It was just the craziest thing. Like, all that stuff was there. It was very smart. Very well done. Or The Others is another good one. A good example. I don't know if you've ever seen The Others, but we'll have to watch. Maybe we'll watch it. We'll watch Scott Pilgrim first.
That's something that I put into my thoughts too. Like when I've worked on Cain and Abel, because one of them is a figment of the imagination of the other, but they're presented as twins because the guy sees the other one as real as anything else. Abel sees Cain as his brother and is always there. But then when you, throughout the entirety of the book, you only see one of them at a time interacting with the environment, or the environment only interacting with one of them. So either people are responding to Cain or they're responding to Abel, but they're not ever responding to both.
To both of them at the same time.
Yeah. And so then later at the end of the book, it's recognized, Abel recognizes, oh, Cain was me the entire time. But you have to like lay those pieces in there so that they're visible, and it gives the readers a chance to see it, or else it feels like it comes out of nowhere. And oftentimes it can. I've read those books too, where suddenly, I think Survive the Night was one of them, where it was just took a sudden left turn. And it was
hard
like, I'm just going to throw this at you at the end. You never would have guessed it. And it's like, no, duh, I never would have guessed the bank robber was a penguin in a sweatsuit, because like you didn't give any clue that that's anywhere that it could go.
I know. I hate it whenever people do stuff like that too. It drives me nuts. It really does. I'm like, what is this? Like,
it's not smart. It just tells the reader that the reader can't trust you. And there's no point to anything in the story because you're going to do whatever you're going to do and act like a god and make things just like happen on a dime. So there's no point in believing the character's actions, believing any action has consequences or risk, because the author will just do whatever at any given moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's like the Deus Ex Machina thing. Everyone refers to that. That is actually Deus Ex Machina. It's like it just solves the entire problem, or it throws everything off.
Yep.
It's just so random. Like there was no setup for it. There was no build-up. There was no clues leading towards it. It's just blam.
Which is what we kind of get here if you think about how book one went, and then we get hell monkeys in this. Like, we're not there yet. But in reading book one, would you have thought, oh, they're going to be hell monkeys that take up about a third of the second book?
Hell no. No, not at all.
I freaking would have thought Yara would have been in here somewhere because she was on the cover of the first book, which somewhat implies a level of importance, especially when she's fighting Avery on the cover of the first book, which is going to imply she's kind of a major aspect of the storyline or arc.
Yeah, and Avery even fights her in his suit on the cover of the first book. So I thought there was going to be some sort of big showdown between the two of them. But Yara isn't even in this book except for on a screen capture.
See, and it would have made sense too if Yara was actually hired by Darren.
It would make sense.
It would have done something. It would have done more than what she did in the first book and not coming into the second book. So like I don't even know
I don't even know why she's in the city to begin with. The Alphacore, when we get to that scene, literally explains nothing. They just say that she's OP and that they got to do more training. That is essentially the bare bones of their conversation. There's nothing explained.
It just goes back to being super vague with a non-committal to anything.
There's no commit. Yeah, it's super vague. And I'm like, what does any of this have to do with fucking anything? Like, going back to the beginning of this book, Altana gets done with, talking to her coworker and stuff like that. And she steps out into her office and notes that she is the only one in her facility, so to speak. So she goes to her office, which I thought this was interesting because Altana was married at one point, but on the door leading into her office, it says Altana Silman Chief Technology Officer. So I don't know if she went back to her maiden name. I don't know if it was a mistake. I kind of think it was a mistake. I think it was
a mistake too.
I think so too.
Considering I think her husband died, and so she was still in love with her husband. I think that's the implication I got from the first one. Is that her husband had died. Then she wouldn't have gone back to her maiden name because she loved her husband.
Exactly, and also could possibly confuse her daughter as well, but that's just a nitpick. Like a lot of people would overlook that, and I probably would have overlooked it too had I not experienced the first book. But she steps in front of her door, leading into her specific space, and her face is scanned or her eye is scanned. You have to have a facial or retinal scan to enter into this room. Well, guess what happens? Lo and behold, Darren is sitting in her office. We don't even know how he got in there. At least not yet. He makes these vague threats. He demands to know why. He knows that she's involved, basically, and he's aggravated that she was involved, like, clearly. But he makes a threat about her daughter. He asks how she is, right? And then Altana knows it's a rhetorical question. But Darren slaps the crap out of her and says, rhetorical! And she's on the ground, and we get to this really hilarious bit where he goes, you ain't doing nothing. Now get the bleep up. Literally, it is censored. It is like what? Hashtag $@ ? Why would you even bother to put that? Just don't even use the word. Either use it or don't use it. You don't got to get fancy with it. That's just what I think. So this whole scene bothered me because he's asking. I don't know how he got in there. At least at the time, I did not know how he gotten in there. Because you need to get in with a facial recognition or a retinal scan. So he's asking her questions about, my Avery is so strong because Avery beat the crap out of his hired except, which is this huge hulking black monstrosity of a man. And he's demanding to know if Avery is one of them. She doesn't get the chance to tell him because, make no mistake, Mr. Lincoln something, the founder of Projexis, busts in, and we kind of find out how Darren was allowed to be there in the first place because Lincoln, her boss, literally allowed Darren to be there in the first place. Because it's the only reason he would have been allowed in there in that building in the first place.
But why was he allowed in there in the first place?
I don't know.
Because even if he's a business partner to Lincoln, going into Altona's place does not make any sense. So then I think Lincoln mentions, there are a couple of moles. Okay, how do you not know? How many moles are there? Because it would mean nobody in your regular staff saw this guy coming in. Nobody in your security staff saw this guy coming in.
Or
nobody in your camera staff saw this guy coming in. Or they all saw him and they're all moles.
No, I think they were watching him because, what's his face? Her boss makes this comment later. It's like, I never meant for things to get taken that far. We weren't going to allow something so they were watching Darren. They knew he was in the building to begin with. They let him in the building.
And they let him into her office. Why?
In her office, in their chief science officer's office.
Well, she wasn't there.
And then, what were you expecting him to do? Are you just seeing if he's going to sneak around and take stuff when we don't ever see what Darren does before Altona gets into her office, but he's probably just sitting there waiting for her to show up. He's got 3. This is what also pisses me off. Darren has maybe 2 or 3 armed men with him, but her boss comes in with guys in full tactical gear wielding ARs. And you're telling me that they're not going to take care of the situation? They're just going to let Darren go?
Yeah, right. So they took it so seriously that he brought dudes in tactical armor with SMGs to go after this guy, but he was theoretically just let into the building. So is he a threat or is he not a threat? Because the way that Lincoln slammed into that room with a small army does not make it look like that they think he's not any sort of threat.
No, he just kind of looks like a petty street thief.
At the very, if they knew this guy enough that they would just let him in, then why would Lincoln not just bring regular security guards? He brought the highest intensity security guard they had laying around. It was tactical gear.
Literally, I'm looking at the page right now and he goes, I just needed to see what you were up to. Why didn't you just interrogate one of the moles that you supposedly fired in your ranks?
Yeah.
You fired all of them. Why didn't you ask them any questions?
Yep.
That makes no sense to me. It's this stupid fucking idea of being in control at all times, but you endangered one of your employees, one of your most valuable employees, just because you wanted to see what Darren was up to. Why the fuck would you even bother letting him go at that point?
Oh yeah, and then he says, we're trying to see what he's up to, and then don't freaking ask Darren anything. Don't take him to interrogation. Don't do anything. They just let him go. So what do you mean you were trying to see what he was up to? He wasn't.
Exactly.
He didn't tell you anything. You didn't keep him.
You didn't keep him. You didn't do anything. It's it's we're told Darren is only there because he was allowed to be there. And again, Darren is there with 3 guys who are armed, and then the guy,
they're armed with just hand pistols,
hand pistols
or handguns.
Yeah.
We have to clarify that he's got handguns, and those guys over there have SMGs and body armor.
Exactly. So he's outgunned and outmanned. There is no feasible reason on God's green earth that Darren would have been able to walk away from that situation. They said they escorted him out. Why didn't you get the cops involved? Why not just take care of him out in the back if you don't want to worry about him anymore? He's infiltrated your system. He has moles in your system. And by the way, what the fuck is Projexis? What do they do there? Why is it so important and significant? We never know. We didn't know in the first one. I just thought it was a company that, like, you know, his sister was working for. But now it seems like it's competing with, like, Darren's company or something like that.
And if it is competing with Darren, then Lincoln would be even more skeptical of Darren, and not just one, let him in, and two, just let him go, because you would think with the way that Lincoln approached Darren with all of the gunmen, then he knows how much of the city Darren owns, because it was the first book where Darren was threatening Avery, saying, I own so much of this city. I am one of the most powerful people in this city.
Yeah.
So Lincoln, being somebody that owns a giant business in that city, would also theoretically be aware of Darren.
Absolutely. And he clearly is. I just don't know why he would not take, because once you cut the head of the snake off, the rest of it starts to die. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're going to try to get people, you know, vying for power, because the structure's been dismantled. Once the head of the snake is gone, the structure's dismantled. Like, it doesn't even matter, really. And I'm only theorizing here. I'm just explaining. But the only reason that Darren was allowed to walk out of there and walk in there in the first place was because the plot requires Darren to be an active participant. It's plot armor. That's all it is. But under no circumstance, again, Darren should have not been allowed in that building. And if he had ever gotten in, he would not or should not have left the building alive.
Was this literally just put in here as a place to carry Darren over from the first book? Because otherwise he would not have been involved in this book at all, where he was set up as the big baddie in the first one. But he has nothing to do with this one. This scene didn't need to happen. It didn't do anything to help build the plot or the mystery or the tension around Avery and his return to this and what's going on with Jasmine, because Jasmine is also virtually forgotten in this book.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to find out what the hell's going on with Jasmine, so I've kind of just let it go. Like, you know, I'm just like, what the fuck ever? Like, the first book didn't give a damn. Like, clearly, no, but she's just like the laziest form of a catalyst to get Avery to go back to the city, which he doesn't even care or focus on that. He just wants to get back at Darren.
Which, you know what would have been a better catalyst that would have gotten actual better response from Avery, and also may have made more sense for Altona to keep it low key, because of the connection between Lincoln and Darren and Altona's place with Lincoln. What if Darren had already sniped Altona's daughter?
Ooh.
And then she calls up Avery and goes, I don't want my boss to know that this happened, because I am the second in command, or I am this high-level position at Projexis. And I can't let the cops know, because there's some under-the-table stuff going on here. Avery, you're the only one that I know the only one I know to call.
Would have been way better.
I know that you care. My daughter is missing.
Agreed. That would have been way better. And also, it'd be funny, because, like, the whole first book could have actually opened with Altona going up to her office and then seeing Darren in her office. And that's how we get introduced to Darren. And we know that he's got, you know, some power. And if he's allowed to be able to get into that room, you know, which is, again, you got to get in by facial recognition or retinal scan. But that could have been a good way to set up the first book. And then, you know, you have Altona calling Avery. Then we switch over to Avery. And then we're introduced to our main protagonist, who gets involved because his family is in danger.
Oh, my gosh. What if that was it? So you take the scene in here where she goes into her office, like you just said, and Darren is there. And then he still does his, you know, how is your daughter doing? Oh, I've already got her. And so then they're playing a little cat and mouse game there, where he is pushing the power that he has over her, because he needs her to say things to Lincoln for him. And so then he doesn't actually attack her at that moment. And then Lincoln also doesn't come in at that moment, but he's using that moment to show that he has power over Altona, and she needs to do what he says, because he's already got her daughter. So then he leaves just fine, because this is also a business partner of Lincoln, but it's got a power struggle going on between Lincoln and Darren. And so then he leaves, and Altona is just sweating buckets. And then she picks up her phone and goes, Avery, you remember your old friend from high school, Darren? Yeah, he was just in my office. He says he has my daughter. I called the school. She's not there.
And then Avery,
and that would have started the beginning of the first book, where she already was calling Avery to come in to look for Jasmine.
I think so too. And also, like, you just forget Jasmine entirely.
Yep.
You know, the little girl's in danger. And so I think people would really like to see that. I mean, you know,
and that is a very strong motivator to get him out of retirement, because whatever happened to him is nowhere near as bad as him losing his niece.
Yeah. Nowhere near as bad as that. I would agree with that entirely. And I honestly, you know, it didn't happen that way, but whatever. I'm not me, you aren't writing this, but it could have happened this way. So
anyway, going back to the actual story as it is. So once Darren is gone out of the office, there's a vague conversation between Lincoln and Altona where he says, I would not have let that go on if I knew that he would do that.
I tell you, man, I was so irritated reading. There's 3 pages of notes that I have on this stupid scene. Like, you shouldn't have let him in there to begin with. Why? What were you trying to achieve? Just wanting to see what he was up to? It's so stupidly vague. What could he possibly want in there? You're not telling us anything. Sometimes it's okay to tell people stuff. It's fine. Like, and then it tries to make her boss look like a good guy. No, you're a fucking asshole. You allowed him into her office and you knew that he was a dangerous guy. Like, why not just inform Altana when she got in there in the first place that, hey, don't go in your office because Darren's in there. We let him in there to see what he was going to do because he's got spies all over the place. Why didn't they just warn her? Like, I don't understand. Did they not catch her as she was coming in or whatever? But whatever, dude. Like,
So at the end of that, he says, in casual conversation, I remember you bringing up the fact that you knew Darren. What on earth have you gotten yourself into? And then that is the catalyst to end that scene and move into the next scene with a very bad transition. Because when I first read it, I thought that the next part was like a reference to what she
a flashback, what happened. Yeah.
But we also get no description and no understanding of what the relationship is between Darren and Lincoln. Are they business partners? Are they from being both powerful people in the city? If so, then Darren needed to have more tact when approaching Lincoln, because now he just messed up his business relationship with Lincoln because he blew whatever he had been working on that built that relationship. So there is nothing. And it's like none of these people work within the framework of how people would actually operate if this was a given situation.
No.
So they just kind of do whatever. And then you're like, well, how did they get to a position of power? Because they don't operate like there is anything that they're following.
You know, it just, you know, if I were Altana, I'd fucking quit right then and there.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing too, like, again, like you mentioned, you don't learn anything new. There's no point to this scene. It's just introducing another character. Yeah. That's it. And it's like, look, I've got big balls and I'm, you know, brass balls or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, dude, I'll be hung up on this for days. So we better just move on.
So we got Lincoln telling Altona that he'll protect her and her daughter, but now they've got a mutual problem, so he needs to know everything. Whatever the connection with Darren is needed to be established in book 1 so that we got what they're getting in this book. Because it feels like it comes out of nowhere when he's asking.
It does.
What exactly is this guy's problem with Darren? Again, this is probably something that stems in making no sense with Darren, that Darren was even in there. Like,
well, I want to know, what exactly do these people do? Like, what is their business? What do they sell? What are their products? Is it drugs? Technology? Like, what exactly does Club Myrrh and then Projexis have in common to where they would be competitors or rivals? I don't understand. Okay, so what is so important about these two people? Other than that they're both powerful men in the city of whatever the fuck, Fort Pole, I don't know.
Florence Spark.
Florence Spark. Floor Spark. There we go. I couldn't remember. So something stupid. It's like, it literally, I don't know what relevance any of these people have on Avery's story. These characters do not need to be in here. Darren, whatever. If you want to have the Darren storyline in the background, that's fine. But we need to focus on Avery most of the time. The only character that I can accept being introduced into this the way they were introduced was that blonde-headed douchebag Gooding. Okay, that's the only character I can accept being introduced to the storyline. That's the only one.
That's
Sorry.
what I feel like. So now with the idea of if it was the daughter that was taken in the beginning with book 1, it would have been a perfect way to have a three-part arc that would bring Avery back into being a superhero and give him a chance to redeem himself against whatever made him quit in the first place.
Yeah, and let go of the past.
And then you could get into the freaking Hell Monkeys and everything else, but you could keep it contained as a small plot to specifically facilitate bringing him back to doing what he was meant to do.
Yeah, and even have like throughout the artwork, you could have told the visual story without words. It could have, you know, Avery sees some debris somewhere and it gives him a flashback to that shot of that girl getting her head crushed in by that monster, you know, and he just looks away and he just can't, like, it's just hitting him all at once. And he's been trying to avoid this for years, but his niece needs his help and he's got to get back into this because there is trouble afoot, you know, and he's the only one that can.
So this is a perfect time to segue into what actually happens immediately right after the Altona in Lincoln. We go into a flashback of some random convention center. There's only a single panel to establish where we are, so it's kind of like...
Well, you know you're at a con because there's a Spider-Man mask on the ground. Sorry, excuse me.
The book kind of moves a little fast with the paneling and kind of skips in establishing shots, even in action scenes that would kind of connect things together. So it feels a little jumpy, but I wasn't sure if it was a comic book convention or a convention that actually celebrates real superheroes, because again, we don't have a sense of like what these people know, but we obviously know that Alphacore exists. We know that Yara exists and has her own outfit. So do these people have conventions? Is it kind of like The Boys where they have public figure versions of superheroes? And so is this a convention for like those public figure superheroes, or is this for comic book superheroes because they don't know that real things exist? We don't know.
No, we don't. It's just a superhero. It's just a nerd convention. It's like a basic, like a Comic Con basically is what I got from it. I didn't think that far into it, but you bring up some really excellent questions. Like, we really don't know, because you told me, and this is going to be I feel like an overarching theme throughout the book. We don't know what is normal and is not normal to the folks of this libertarian utopian version of Texas. We don't know. And we don't know, like you had just said before, like, is this a comic book convention that's celebrating their heroes, or are there actual comic books? But we don't know. There's no real sense of grounding or understanding of the world that we're all trying to read and these characters are existing in. There's no understanding of it.
It would have done something for that if it was like you mentioned, like a Spider-Man mask on the ground. If they if they'd actually had like posters that were Alphacore or that were references to other people that were at these messed up booths, that would tell you if it was these characters. So what you're telling me then, if there's a Spider-Man mask on the ground, it's that this is a deviation or a version of the world that we live in. But so we have Superman and Spider-Man and all the regular comics, but then we also have the comic book heroes, which doesn't really make sense.
No, not at all. I'm just like, I don't know if that's just like a... Also, you might want to be careful because, you know, Marvel's probably pretty, you know, Spider-Man's their flagship character.
Yeah.
You know, there's like, I'm looking at it right now. There is a little Spider-Man mask on the ground. But either way, moving on from that, amongst the debris, we find two people. It's a young girl and a young guy. And she wants to leave because she thinks the coast is clear. But the guy's like, hell no, I'm not moving until it is all okay. And then he says that thing looked like one of the Brigaders from the Silo comics. And then she goes, who? But she proceeds to go, what? You're wearing a blank, and then size, of course. So this girl is in cosplay, and she's cosplaying, I guess, like their version of a Wonder Woman. But of course, for some fucking reason, every girl who goes to conventions is a fraud. Hashtag fake gamer girl, hashtag fake geek girl, hashtag grifter girl. Okay. So I find that interesting. It's like, is this what you guys think of us? That we don't know our superheroes enough to like get dressed up as seem like it's kind of pointless. I'm sure there's probably girls that like that, but there's also guys that are like that too, who just want to dress up like this character because they think they look cool. That's not specifically a female thing. I just wanted to note that. But she tells him to keep it, mum's the word, basically. Don't let anybody know that I'm a fake gamer girl. But soon enough, someone approaches them and lifts up the table that they're hiding behind, and wouldn't you know it, it is your friendly neighborhood Isom, who is literally very friendly to the point that it is so laid on, it's laid on so thickly that he was such a different person before what happens. And it's really jarring. He's like a Dudley Do-Right type character. That's what I got from it. And he's like holding his hand out to them like, it's all good, you're safe now. And then they're like, oh, thank God. And he, helps them. And then they're asking him questions about what happened, basically. And he said, oh, well, it's still kind of chaos. Like, I didn't really get rid of that thing. They're trying to, get shit settled outside, but I'm still kind of surveying the area to find stragglers and get them out of here. He then hears something, and then...
Which, on that note, with the trying to figure out what happened and asking them what happened, it doesn't feel like an appropriate time to do that if there's still action going on outside. Number two, wouldn't it be something that if he came with a group, because you're assuming if they're like, oh, we're dealing with stuff outside and we know that Alphacore exists, is Alphacore outside? Who are the other people dealing with this? Are there other people in the convention center looking for stragglers? Who is out there? Are there other monsters around here than the one that's going to show up here in a second?
Or is it just one?
Is it just the one? If it's just the one, then what are they doing cleaning up outside? Shouldn't they be inside? When Isom showed up, didn't the cops outside inform him of what was happening along with whoever else was there?
I don't really know what his role in all of this was.
There's no definition of something existing, of the circumstances existing outside of this specific panel. And so then it means there's no way to grasp the universe.
No, and also another thing too, is the monster is named Chadron. And Chadron, either is he an alien or is he a monster? We don't know, but it seems like people are familiar in a sense that they're familiar with the comic book version, because the boy that was talking to the fake geek girl, said like, those guys looked like so-and-so from this comic book. So, maybe they're not used to it, but that doesn't really...
But then if we've got no reference for that and that they are not familiar with it, then how are they not like screaming when they see this non-human beast thing?
Exactly. Unless they saw it before, but even still, they haul ass out of there, man, or they try to at least. And
yep. So they go running as soon as Avery tries to give them cover. And the beastie chases after them and catches the girl and squishes the girl's head. And Avery is like, no. And this is why he quit. But the scene happens so fast. There doesn't feel like there's actual impact. And so this doesn't, this goes into what was Avery doing before this happened? Did he not have any exposure to traumatic events? Has he had no exposure to death or murder or violence as a superhero? And so
what I think is funny is how no one fucking recognizes Avery as Isom because he doesn't wear a mask. It's just like, what was he doing before all of this? It's too much. It's too much. And my brain is like, this was dumb. This didn't make sense. This is why this didn't make sense. And it's going to continue to enter into what the fuckville USA. I just imagine it being that way.
Yeah, this just felt like a vague disaster set up for the attack for a tragedy instead of actually making something that exists and makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it even would have made more sense for him to be traumatized if he went in there maybe with a buddy that eventually lost to Chadran when they were supposed to be working together. And maybe that other guy that he'd gone in there with, or his partner as the superhero, went in and fought Chadran off of him. And then that other guy ended up dying. When they were supposed to be able to lean on each other and trust each other. Like, it needs to have something of an emotional impact that was more than a random person. Or we needed more setup for Avery to see how sensitive he was and also how detached from actual violence he was.
Yeah.
Because we also have no idea of if he was a young superhero. So was this the first time that he experienced death or this sort of violence? Because he didn't seem very resistant when he went in, and he didn't seem very scared when he saw Chadran for the first time. So that would make you assume that he's had experience.
Yeah, I'm assuming he had experience before, because I think it would have been better if he was a younger superhero. Could have been one of these things where maybe he was sort of getting into the game for the first time. And, for the first few months or maybe to a year of his career as an accept superhero, he just basically took care of low crime. But he had maybe somebody there to kind of be his sponsor, maybe.
Yeah.
Some sort of sponsor, keep an eye on him, an older superhero, someone's been doing it for a long time. And eventually, due to some whatever circumstance, Isom and his theoretical, hypothetical sponsor enter into a altercation where it's a huge crowd of people that are all in a panic. They have to learn how to deal with fighting something in like large crowds of people. You just show Avery kind of like dealing with some pushback of getting into this superhero game, and that things can be very complicated because maybe he did have this very bright-eyed sense of the world, and it was all good versus evil, and the bad guys always lose, the good guys always win. And his mentor or whoever it was, or sponsor, did not inform him of how tragic everything. In fact, maybe Lincoln could have been an accept, and he was his like mentor or something like that, and that's how they're connected to each other. But since that happened, Avery left. He couldn't deal with it.
I think that scene could have been helped with him having a little more setup, because I think if he was a young person, a young accept, and this was, a young superhero person, then this could have been set up by having him have maybe a couple panels or a couple of pages where he's with that mentor person. And then the phone call comes in to go to the convention center and watch out for this thing. And so then his mentor tells him, hey, go in and look for stragglers while I'm out here doing these things, because that guy is going to be dealing with the beastie that they heard about. And so then Avery goes inside and finds these stragglers. And then Chadran comes up. And this is the first time Avery's seen something like that. And he goes, what the hell is that thing?
Yeah.
And then he's just like, go, 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 go. Like, this is the first time that he's actually being relied on for something like this. And then the random girl gets attacked and dies. And so like having that extra buildup to that moment and all that extra context actually helps give that strength as to him going, okay, I quit. I can't do this. Because the first time that he was relied on, he failed. This book, the first book, had the same issue as this book, and you see it continuously with each of these scenes, is it wastes pages on stuff that doesn't matter, like introducing new characters, and then rushes through scenes without giving them the setup that they need to have the proper payoff to make sense of the scene.
Yeah.
Because what we just discussed with what the convention center scene, you could literally take off the thing with Altona at the beginning of this and replace it with that, and it would make more sense.
It would make more sense. I feel like it also endear us more to Avery. And so maybe that, would kind of go into why he's reluctant to go into the city again. Because it's like, oh, I failed the first time. You guys can't count on me. This is the type of work I want to do because people rely on me and I'm actually reliable for them. But this superhero shit, not for me. But when his niece is in trouble, he's going to have to like step up to the plate. And actually do. It doesn't make him a coward. It just means I know what I can do. And there's other superheroes out there. It's just not something that I can do.
Yeah.
But when it's his niece, and there's all sorts of shady things going on between Projexis and Darren and, what you were mentioned before, it gives him that incentive to then go and be the best that he can be and actually be reliable and maybe reinvigorate and reignite the love that inspired him to be a superhero in the first place. If he could rescue his niece and rescue people that are important, actually be that reliable person. Yeah, because even his Oh, I'm sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, even Cedric, the costumer, said, you gave up because you couldn't save that girl, but you failed to save more with your inaction, which is not true, which is not untrue. But then again, I don't know how many superheroes and accepts there are. I don't really know what this world or how many of them there are. I don't know if they're more on the line of being like X-Men, where they're sort of outcasted by society, or if they're more in line with the Avengers, people who are sanctioned by the government and are monitored by the government and are okay with the people. So I don't really know what exactly the circumstances of being an accept is in Isom. You are basically someone who has powers, but how many are there? You clearly have Alphacore. You have that big black dude that Darren hired, and then you have Avery, and then another character we meet later, and then I don't even think Gooding counts. He's more like a Tony Stark character where he just kind of like built his superhero at him, or maybe he's not even really a hero. He's actually kind of weird, but we'll get there. But it's not untrue that your inaction you failed to save more people. But again, it's like, well, is Isom the only hero? Is there nobody looking out for the city? Is it just got to be Isom? Is that like what was his reputation in the past?
Yep, because also if he was a newbie at that point, then I don't feel like you can lay it on him that, you killed more people by not being something. Like, that's just going to make somebody be like, I don't want to be a part of this. You've already laid all of this responsibility on me. I mean, that leans too far into something like silence is violence.
Yeah, I think that's
where
ridiculous.
You're telling this person that they've got responsibility to do what you want them to do, or else they are guilty of hurting people. And it's like, no.
No.
You don't know what he's been doing all this time. Him running a successful farm that feeds a bunch of people is a worthy thing to be going and doing. So just because he's not doing exactly what you want him to do doesn't mean that he's killing people, and that is so manipulative.
It is really manipulative. The whole language is like him being that way, because again, it's like, well, if he was like a great superhero, I can see why maybe, he was very well known, well liked, he could kick ass, and he was good at what he was doing. Then I could see Cedric being like, well, you were one of the best, and now you're not doing it anymore, and now, you're actually letting people die, and maybe make him that manipulative person. Or Avery, being a fresh new superhero on the scene, just could not hack it at the age he was at. Because it doesn't specify how long that incident was. It just says years ago. So maybe 6, 7, 8 years go by. I don't know how long it's been, but there's no real structure to it that gives us a sense of place. You know what I mean?
Again, it's just vague. It's vague with the setting. It's vague with everything. It's non-committal. So we finish with that flashback of the girl's head popping and Avery reaching out, and he's sitting down in the room with the Tailor, and that's who he's talking to about all of this stuff. And he says, and the dude is like, just because you pretend it away does not mean that evil isn't present, because he's lecturing Avery about just not a superhero. We have no start to this conversation, like Avery saying why he's quitting, and the guy is arguing that he can't quit, and Avery basically is implying that he'll ignore evil because he doesn't feel like he can stop it. This is when I was reading it, this was one of the conflicts. I was like, I need to see the start of this conversation to see how they're interacting. But a lot of these scenes, because this kind of goes back to setting up the convention center, correct? It starts too late in the scene where the conflict is already happening, so you don't see the spark of the conflict, so you don't see the buildup, so it doesn't make as much sense, and it doesn't have as much meaning.
No, not at all. It doesn't. None of it did. And then, in fact, this is just another scene that you can easily blow right through. It has a few, platitudes, sloppily thrown in there about, like, just because you ignore evil doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Okay. But he says it's going to take him like a couple of days to actually, and this is important. Cedric says it's going to take him at least a couple of days to fix Isom's / Avery's suit and upgrade it, so to speak. So, they basically part ways at that point, and Avery finally gets to go home. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that situation, but I just thought it was like something that you just kind of breeze right through, and it holds no weight on the story because there was nothing there to begin with to set up that relationship between him and his costumer, when the costumer didn't even recognize him, but also recognized him at the same time. It was weird. Like,
and so the costumer is also like, at the end of this, he's like, so I'm not your father. This suit is my imprint. So people are going to know that it's my suit when you're wearing it around. So there are expectations if you're going to wear my suit. And those are the conditions of you wearing my suit. Do you understand? And if you feel like that's vague, that's because the conversation was vague. He didn't actually state the conditions either.
No, he didn't. There's some conditions. Like, what are they? What are they? Tell me. I would love to know. You're wearing my suit. Well, was Avery like reckless in one of your suits? Like, what's the deal? Do you have clients that are also reckless with your suits, and you're sick of that shit, and you're gonna be like, listen, bub, I'm gonna make you sign a contract that if you put one scratch on this suit, you cannot work with me again.
Well, why all of a sudden is Avery like respecting this guy? Because this guy's not really showing Avery respect, and disrespect was a big thing in the last book. But this guy is now telling Avery what to do, and Avery is like, okay, is it because of the suit? Not because like what does the suit do? Because when he was wearing his street clothes in the previous book, he got flung a bunch of stories down and hit a car. He was not damaged. His clothing was not torn.
No, so what nothing.
Benefit does the suit give him that his normal clothing doesn't have?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, but also another thing, I think the reason why Avery might not think that this is disrespect, it's a form of disrespect, but it's not the aggressive sort of disrespect that Darren was showing Avery in the first book. But in this one, he's still being disrespected. It's just subtle. So
then after all of that, Avery now returns to his ranch.
Yeah.
And he goes to see Sam, but the door is left open to the room that Sam is usually in, or the security room. And he goes into this place without an ounce of self-preservation, which you think he might have, especially because he's traumatized from a girl dying. So clearly something.
Yeah.
And he works around a bunch of animals. So maybe a wild animal snuck in. Like, why is this door open? But he doesn't
yeah. It's just weird because it's like, well, like, is this unusual for Sam to do this? You know, leave the door open? It's been it's been like probably a day since Avery's been gone. That's what I'm going to assume. It's been like a day and a night. And he's finally back home. But there is no caution with him entering into this building. He just kind of willy-nilly pell-mell, like, oh, Sam, it's stupid of you to leave this door open. And it's like, well, does Sam usually do that? So no, like, but it's just, it's weird. It's not terrible, but it's not great, at least not in my opinion. Like, this fool must have dozed off. His wife is going to be pissed if he was at the ranch all night. So there's another clue to me that suggests that, well, maybe Sam didn't show up. Does Avery think that he was here all night? Is that something that Sam does?
And if Sam does do that, wouldn't that imply that something bad happened at the ranch? So he should be like, oh, crap. Was Sam here all night? Is that because I left him here in charge, or did something happen at the ranch? I need to double check with him and see what happened while I was gone.
Yeah, and so he goes in, and he complains that there's bugs in there, and he goes, this is why you don't leave the door. This is why you close the door. And then in the background, you see glowing red eyes appearing in the darkness, and then these giant demonic monkeys appear out of nowhere. Hell monkeys.
And they go, we know what you are. And it's like, is that supposed to be a secret?
Yeah, we know what you are. And then Avery, he asks what they are, which that is kind of weird to me considering Chadron exists. And he's like, what are you guys? Like, what are y'all? But maybe he's just never seen this sort of thing before, I'm guessing, or this sort of creature before. Maybe he's seen others before. But again, we don't really know what is normal and abnormal to the people of this city in the great state of, or your great country of Texas, excuse me, since it's receded from the rest of the United States.
So he's looking at these things, and they say they know what he is. We don't know if that's a genetic mutation of some kind. Was Avery a superhero for more than that one day? Was he pretty famous? Is that what they're referring to? If accepts are regulated or watched by the government, then wouldn't they know when he retires or like where he is, and would he be bugged by people? Like, this is another one of those setting questions that we have because we have no concept of how things work.
No.
We know that Alphacore exists. Is Alphacore government regulated? But then we've got the guy that Darren hired. So they're not forced to work in a certain way. Are they regulated? Are they tracked? Are they not tracked? Obviously, the government is following, well, not the government, but the city is following around Yara.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's like, what's going on? Who are you people?
So the demon monkeys are like, he will be here soon. Then they spontaneously combust and disappear. Again, nonsensically.
Yeah, nonsensically. It's like, why? Just why? Like, what did you achieve with this? Just to let him know that they know what he is and that he will be seeing you soon. So I don't mind this necessarily. I don't think it's terrible, because it does set up an overarching mystery. The problem is the rest doesn't fit with the rest of the books. Like,
see, the thing that I ask with that is, what was the purpose of the weremonkeys being there saying he will be here soon?
Yeah, who are you guys talking about? Like, what's going on? So they explode, like literally explode.
Did they get left behind specifically by the group that went in and then grabbed Sam, and those two were left, or those three, or however many there were left behind as suicide bombers to tell Avery? So they were just sitting around playing Go Fish until Avery showed up so they could complete the mission and then explode because that was their entire mission. Like, I personally, when I'm writing and when I'm reading, I go, why is this character here? What are they trying to accomplish? And how do their actions show it? And I do that for every character in the scene. So here, looking at these monkeys, I'm like, okay, I'll be in this moment and see what you're doing. But like, what was the purpose of you exploding? Were you literally just left behind to be suicide bombers? Or were you, if they were actually, why didn't they like latch onto him and attack him to try to explode him? Because then I'm thinking about later when they're in their weremonkey cave and the monkeys are attacking him. So then clearly they don't need to keep him alive. So then why didn't these guys try to kill him?
I don't know. Honestly, I do not know. I don't even know what the purpose of that scene was. Like, you know, it would have been easier if maybe he saw like a fight had gone down in there. Like, why did we need to see these weremonkey demon
or his
things?
Place was on fire. Like, it could have been the door, not just the door was open, but the place was already on fire from when they ransacked it for Sam.
Yeah.
Because we would have had the exact same result if he got there, the place was on fire, he ran inside looking for Sam, he got hurt because of the fire, he goes outside, and Gooding shows up. It would have been the same thing, but with less questions that don't make sense.
Yeah, and then also less people, too, because after he gets out of there, you know, the Lone Ranger Brigade shows up. They're like, boss, what the hell? Like, where the hell were you guys? Like, did y'all not notice Sam wasn't there this morning? Like, what's going on? Like, they proceed to patch him up. They say that they've called Gooding in so he can put out this fire. And if, for those who don't know, Gooding is like the local utility guy, I guess. That's the only way I can put it. And he offers his services to rural areas so people don't have to be, I guess, not looked after. But so, you know, they're questioning about what happened. They're starting to patch him up, and then eventually Gooding shows up. Or Gooding. I always want to say Gooding, but I think it's Gooding. He shows up with all these like drones and shit, and he, you know, gets his helmet on. He goes in there, and he's like getting ready to put this fire out. And then the next scene, we're fucking somewhere else. We're with Alphacore. I don't give a damn.
Because first, when Gooding is there, Gooding is like, what happened? And Avery's like, you won't believe me if I told you. Because he's thinking about the Hell Monkeys. And he's like, how am I going to tell them about the Hell Monkeys? No one is going to understand or believe me if I tell them about the Hell Monkeys.
Oh, that's right.
It brings into question what is normal. Because those other people saw Chad run. So how often do people see things that don't look human? Are they actually strange? Because we don't know. If Gooding does this kind of work, has he seen other things? Has Alphacore seen other things? Has Avery seen other things? Because Avery was more like, what the hell are you? He wasn't like, oh my God, what the fuck is that?
I know, exactly.
It was like the first time seeing an animal as opposed to just like that breaks reality.
Exactly. You're right. So this might be normal for them, but then it goes into like, you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you. Again, like, what's normal for, like, I don't get it.
So then we go over to the Alphacore scene. And you think you're going to learn what's going on now? You're wrong. It's more vague writing. You're going, what we are dealing with is a very serious matter that could be beyond your understanding. I've heard about her. I even did some surface level research, but clearly there's plenty that I'm not aware of. What do you know that I don't? That would be the only relevant information at the moment. And then somebody else goes, I don't need to be reminded of your investigative talents. What talents?
Yeah,
she was just like, I don't
researching.
She was just like, I don't know what the frick is going on, and you don't know what's going on. So, like, what research talents? So then,
what do you mean by that, man?
Braxwell spoke highly of them and truth be told, it's the only reason you're wearing the suit. And those are direct quotes from the book, and they don't tell you anything that is going on.
No, it's just, I feel like this is all just been one big setup to like the Justice League 2.0. I mean, I actually, to be honest with you, I don't even know anymore, because maybe in the first issue I would have thought that, but then the second issue completely, threw me off course. Like, we took a hard left turn. Like, I would not have assumed anything supernatural would be happening in this comic, because there was nothing to indicate that in the first issue. Mm-hmm. And then we get to these people who are talking about someone who is barely relevant in the first issue, is not relevant, period, in the second issue, and there's just these people talking. It's just one big fucking ad for other people to buy comics. The rest of the comics, like, it's stupid.
So we got Alphacore Man is looking at a picture of Yara, labeled Yara on the screen, saying that he was challenged when he first fought her and gave her an out so that she could do whatever, and she took it. But now she's ignoring the negotiations. What are those negotiations? We don't know. He says nothing about the relationship they have with Yara or what their expectations with Yara is. So then we also learned that Yara is both OP, she is completely powerful, but also somehow not a threat to Alphacore, despite the fact that she is also ignoring the agreement that they have. So how convenient that she is both all-powerful, has an agreement, ignores the agreement, but is also not a threat to these guys. So then why are they even bothering with her?
Yeah, why are we even talking about her in the first place? Like, there's no need for these people to be introduced. No, they were barely in the first one. They turned up, they fought her, and then they were gone. Yep. And then they show up here. I don't care about them. There's no reason for them to be involved or shown, period.
Yep. I don't know what Alphacore's job actually is at this point, because it's obviously not to rein in accepts, since it's obvious they let Yara go. But it's also not about minimizing casualties, because they didn't go to check on Avery, and they're talking about, dude was just a casualty anyway. When he got thrown, by check on him, I mean when he got thrown by Yara. They weren't like, oh no, we're supposed to try to make sure people don't get hurt by accepts. So they never actually went to the hospital to make sure that guy was okay after the interaction with Yara. They were just like, that guy's a casualty, so who cares? So they don't minimize casualties and they don't rein back accepts. So what is their job exactly?
I don't know. Like, it doesn't say. I guess we'll have to find their comic too and read it and find out.
Maybe, because maybe the entire comic will just be vague in between, referencing completely other stories that you have to go and buy 5-6 other series. You're going to have Alphacore, and then it's going to have some reference to the Viking guys, and then some reference to some other guys, and then some reference to some random kid in high school to start a whole nother series.
Then Gooding, whatever. It's like, it's going to be a whole thing where you got to buy to fucking be involved with it. You're gonna have to pay to read and find out anything, because it's just it really annoys me that this is what they're doing. I think it's really uncouth. It's a marketing strategy, yeah, but I think it's despicable in a lot of ways, because it's like, you're not even telling people anything in your first and second issue, but then you're foisting these storylines on them that don't even impact the Avery storyline at any possible degree at all. And I'm just like, I don't want to buy your fucking comic book. I want you to focus on this one goddamn fucking story. And then maybe I'll consider the others. But I don't want to have to buy flashcards. I don't want to have to buy 6 other comics just to know what the fuck is going on. That's lazy and dishonest, and I do not like it. Like, this is actually something that makes me really fucking angry, because it does remind me of what Capcom and a bunch of other game companies used to do to their consumers, which was make them buy more downloadable content just to pay to play the full fucking game. Like, I'm sorry, but this is not fun. It's bad storytelling. It's a slap in the face to everything. It's badly written. Sorry, I'm just clearly I'm irritated. I hate this. It is something that is just give me war flashbacks to whenever I get a game that I spent almost $70 on to find out that I have to buy $10 worth of downloadable content just to play the full game to get the full context. I think that's shallow and greedy.
Then we also got this situation where they're saying that they've known Yara for years, but just now this one chick, she's saying that they'll cross-reference everything they know about Yara. It's just reading like it's not developed to me at this. They know everything, but they don't know everything, but they've known about her for years, and they've talked to her, and they've got agreements, but they don't know anything about her. It's just like everything all at once.
Everything all at once, but nothing at all.
At least the book knows that it's a problem when someone says, a big criticism I have of this team is our lack of data collection. For times like this, it'll help to have more detailed reports and documentation. So you were just praising what's-her-face over there for her research skills, but you're also like, oh my gosh, her documentation and reports suck. So how do you know that she's doing good report or research?
Yeah, exactly. Or he was being sarcastic when he said that. But I don't know, because I don't know these characters very well enough to know that was sarcasm or not. To know if that was sarcasm. So, like, I don't know. Like, this was just pointless.
The chick starts saying her specialty is research, but they know nothing after years of working on stuff with Yara. So what kind of deal did they even strike with Yara? And they know nothing, but she's still hanging around. Pointless scene ends with a pointless line of, quote, I'm going to go get some training in. You know the drill. So more vagueness.
Mm-hmm.
And then a picture, and then we switch over to a picture of Avery sleeping, doing anything.
That doesn't look like, I'm looking at it now, I don't think that's them watching him from where he's sleeping, because he's in a completely different outfit. That's the outfit. Or wait, no, I take it back. Sorry. Like,
what is that? See, so
what is this? Is this from when he fell down with Yara? Like,
what is that? They're looking at a screen of him sleeping, right?
It looks like he's knocked out. That could have been whenever Yara like knocked his ass into a car. But it doesn't look like he's on a car. It looks like he's like on a mattress or something.
Well, is it one of the times when he was sleeping back at his house? Because we get the picture of Avery. So the Alphacore has the whatever video that they're following Avery with. But didn't they say that, oh, that guy was just a casualty earlier? So then why does Alphacore have a picture of him if he's also met just a casualty? He's clearly of interest to them then.
Yeah.
So then they've changed what they thought of him within the same scene. And then we switch back to the ranch where Gooding asks Avery what happened because the building is destroyed on the inside. And Avery asks if Gooding would even believe him because apparently the supernatural creatures are abnormal, but they're not, but they are.
Yeah, they're not, but they are, but they're not, but they also are. Like, it's just nothing is consistent. It's all just take my word for it and don't question anything. And but it's funny because like they're talking about it and he's asking him, you know, like he wanted to salvage the cameras, but he couldn't because, or like most stuff was salvageable except for the cameras because the cameras were super dated. Avery does not like modern cameras because it was like the only means that he could have like a security system without it being uploaded into a cloud. So I guess he's not a fan of Apple, so to speak. So,
Avery eventually tells Gooding about the beast without any other objection, and Gooding already is giving Avery a special healing ointment for free despite like 5 seconds ago saying, hey, you should buy my services. But like, so he's not even like, hey, you should buy my services. BT dubs. Do you want like maybe a free sample of my services? Then just give him a little bit and then be like, if you want more, $15. So do you want him to be selling his services or do you want him to be giving his stuff away for free?
Yeah, it's like you want a full investigation. It's going to cost you more. And it's like,
is Gooding a salesman or is he just giving stuff away for free?
I don't know what he is. I thought Avery was already paying for his services. Maybe I read it wrong shit, but I thought he was paying for the services already.
And you would think so because the people, like his ranchers, were the ones that called him.
Yeah, they did.
So is he paying for the services? And if he's not, then why did the ranchers call him?
I don't know. Maybe to let him know that, hey, look, our building's on fire. Help us. Oh my God. Like, you know.
Since Avery's camera footage was destroyed, Gooding tells him to send an email describing the monsters then. Avery lays down for a nap when his sister calls, still at work.
Hold on. Sam is missing. There were demon monkeys in his security room, and he decides to take a nap. Like, there's no urgency with trying to find... I can understand being exhausted, and he probably is, but your ranch foreman is missing. Your head of operations is missing. This is another important person.
Your place is also just attacked. Are you not afraid that the freaking hell monkeys are going to come back for a second
and disrespect you? Like, you know, he's going to have a go with them. Disrespected me. That won't be tolerated. But then he wants to lay down and take... I'm sorry. I couldn't get over that.
And when she calls, she's with Lincoln and says that he's taking care of Darren, whatever that means. But Avery needs to come over so they can devise a plan, and Avery's really mad. Again, the scene has barely any conversation in it. It's really shallow, but he gets so angry and then leaves looking really melodramatic.
I know. I don't think he, yeah, he looks exhausted. If I were Avery, I'd want to go fucking knock the lights out of Lincoln for, you know, endangering my sister. You know, I'd be like, that's the real person. Like, literally, Avery gets up and he's just like, I'm going to kill him. And then it cuts to Darren, which is not a bad thing. You know, Darren's in his office. You know,
rubbing his hands together like he's got control over Lincoln, but Darren is literally written as an incompetent loser.
I know, he really is. Like, I don't feel any sort of threat. Like, he's not done one thing that has shown me that he is threatening and can get away with things. He just hasn't shown me any of that.
So the big guy from book 1 comes in and tells Darren that he better watch himself because Darren really isn't imposing at all. He's not threatening. He commands zero respect. So this big guy is like, hey, you better watch out. And Darren is like, we got guns that kill people like you, so you better behave yourself. And Darren asks the guy, is he like you? And the guy is like, I don't know if Avery is like me. I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah, and then Darren's like, of course. He's like, get out. This contract is done, and good luck finding any work that's even remotely comparable. Like, he just got his ass kicked. Why would he want to work for you? And clearly the guy doesn't respect him. And it's like, well, I've got a magic gun with a magic bullet in it that can put out magic people like you. Like,
that's literally what should have happened in that moment if Darren wanted to show himself as any sort of threat. Not if the guy's like, so the big guy over there is being defiant because Darren is obviously being like, is this guy like you? And that guy fought Avery. So that guy would have a general idea of guessing. And so if this guy is openly being defiant, then Darren would be like, okay, light him up and then just kill him. Yeah, and that would show that Darren actually has one brass and threat. Because then he follows through. And everybody in that room then sees Darren follow through. But instead, this big guy has plot armor for no apparent reason.
I know.
And Darren goes, okay, fine, disrespect me, and then just go. I tell you to go.
And then somebody goes, you don't think that was a bit of an overreaction, boss? Shut up before I fired you. Why aren't you fucking killing people? You're the bad guy. These people are like... It's the same thing with Lincoln, where Lincoln just allowed Darren into his place of business, into an important staff member's office, just to see what he was up to. And then Darren's going to do the same thing because all these people, for whatever reason, have plot armor on. And then he doesn't not only just not follow through with any of these employees that are disrespecting him, he just completely decides to let go of the whole thing and just allow other people to do it for him.
I mean, you know what would have made this scene and Darren have weight and be badass? So you've got the big guy who goes, I'm not answering your stupid question. So Darren says, light him up. So then his dudes right around, specifically his more loyal ones, light up that big guy and he falls over and dies on the ground. And then that other henchman over there goes, whoa, boss, aren't you being a little emotional? And then Darren pulls the gun out of his shirt and kills that guy.
And then he's like, I'm not being
And then he goes, that. Yeah. And then he either goes like what you just said, I'm not being fucked with, or he goes, anybody else got something to say?
Exactly. Like that would have been perfect. Like just firing the guy, like clearly he must do this all the time, so it's not an overreaction for Darren. But then again, we really don't know what Darren was like before any of his introduction into the story happened, so it's like there's no context for him being this way other than he's just a very emotionally aggressive person. Avery is actually calmed down significantly in this book. Mm-hmm. He's very calm in this book, and I don't even know why. It's very jarring. He goes from asshole guy who doesn't give a damn about anybody but himself and his vendetta against Darren to a flashback where he's literally Dudley Do-Right who lost in a fight with this monster, and now he's just calm. Like it's really weird contradicting this idea of caring for people, like the way he cared so much about losing that girl. That just doesn't go away. You still care about people, and Avery does not show 1 ounce of concern for anybody. Not his sister, not Sam, not anybody but himself and that girl who he lost anyway. Like, there's nobody. You know, and if he really cared that deeply and it affected him that deeply, then that sort of thing would still be there. I feel like he'd be more of a hesitant character because he would not want to lose anybody again like that. Mm-hmm. So that kind of concern and care for people and the need to want to do right, that just does not go away. Of course, we don't know how long it's been since that happened because it doesn't give us an exact number of how many years ago that was. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. But
though then I'm actually kind of irritated now that Darren didn't go as hardcore as he could have easily gone in that scene. It would have been so good.
It would have been so good. He's just kind of like, it really would have. I would have been like, let Darren be a badass mobster. Let him be that guy. Or if you're worried about killing in front of a bunch of your child audience, I don't know if he has anybody reading his children. It might be because it's not age appropriate. That could be one of the reasons why. But you could still.
Then you don't have to show the blood because you could still have him say light him up and then have the shot with Darren and then the guys with the guns behind him shooting over him. And then in the next panel, you show like the shadow of the body collapsing and then it's on the ground. You don't have to show blood.
You don't have to show blood or anything like that.
Because then you could also, if he follows up with him pulling the gun out of his jacket to shoot the other guy for questioning him, you could have the panel, you know, that panel where he's pulling it, pointing it, the flash panel of the bullet going off, and then him falling over, and you've got Darren with a gun pointed at where the guy was standing, and then he goes, anybody else want to say something or got something to say?
Classic line, you don't got to show it.
You don't have to show it. You just got to imply it, and it can have some really cool panels to give him those shots of being this boss.
Absolutely,
I agree. Huge missed opportunity.
It is a huge missed opportunity. I don't even know what the point of it was. Like, and then after that happens,
then he's demanding some random chick with a mohawk make sure that Jasmine is back in his office before curfew so that she can get her spankings.
I know, it's like, what is the relevancy of Jasmine? She wasn't that relevant in the beginning of the story, and she still feels like she's not relevant now. Like, what is her purpose? Is she a mole? Is she a spy for Darren? Or is she a spy for Projexis and went in undercover? And Altana just doesn't know it. Like, there could be so much stuff you could do with Jasmine's character if you put a little emphasis on it, as it's the fact that it's meant to be the catalyst that brought Avery into the fold with getting involved with Darren again.
Yep.
But no. And guess what happens next?
And we get some new characters again.
New characters. God.
We skip to a place called Obertonic Arena, which looks like a wrestling arena, talking vaguely about people who don't matter until Larry Shungite comes in.
Suge Knight
talking about how the belt was stolen from him. Then we enter Lincoln, who is watching this show reluctantly doing business, because the whole thing with the wrestling and bringing in this huge character to have his own like splash page is just watching it on television. So like, why did we just spend 4 or 5 pages on this character that doesn't freaking matter?
Yeah, exactly. Is this another fucking comic book character that I'm gonna have to pay to read just to know who he is? Like,
to know the relevance of these wasted pages in this story that Avery almost has nothing to do with at this point.
Yeah, Avery barely has anything to do with his own fucking story. And it's like, it's like ridiculously annoying as the fact that, like, I remember in my notes, I had basically written that, like, and the next scene doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't mean anything. It shouldn't be in here at all. For fuck's sake, it's a wrestling match, and then we get introduced to. And I'm not fucking kidding. The most retarded thing I've ever seen in forever. A dude called Larry Suge Knight. Larry Suge Knight, you heard me correctly, shows up and complains about he's gonna, win his does any of this even matter? Like, no. It's like, it's not a part of the story.
It's its own comic, so make it a side thing. That the second part feels where it goes into Lincoln also feels like an entirely different thing. So we get Lincoln and watching a television broadcast of this wrestling thing, and he goes to the emptiest room that he possibly could with a metal detector going to nowhere and a floating button next to it on the panel. Like, it is a really bizarrely drawn panel. And it doesn't make any sense.
Is it an elevator? Is it a metal detector? It's clear, like, I heard somebody saying that, oh, well, maybe the wall behind it is glass, and then where are the reflections of everybody? If it's glass.
The page is just bizarrely drawn.
Yeah.
For whatever it's supposed to be. The detector is useless because it beeps, but they don't stop him from going in anyway. So, like, what was the point of going through the metal detector?
No,
it didn't matter.
No, it did not matter at all. And then we get introduced to some other person who I'm only going to surmise is like a fucking mole too. But for who? Because at this point, I don't even think it's because it's Darren. I don't think it's Darren. It seems like it's something else. Like,
it's Yara.
That it's
no,
Yara.
Yeah, there's a chick because as she's walking away, the tips of her hair are blue.
Oh, it's Yara? Holy shit.
It's Yara, yeah.
I didn't know that was Yara. What the fuck, dude? I thought she never made an appearance.
So that's what I was just going to say. She didn't make an appearance as herself. She made an appearance as this character, as a side character. So what this feels like, everything with Lincoln, feels like it's stuff that belongs in the Yara book. It does not belong in the main Avery book, because this whole thing, apparently with Lincoln, with Altona's connections with Lincoln, or whatever Lincoln is doing right now that connects with Yara, it's Yara's plot line related. So why is it here when we haven't established Avery yet, and now we're distracting from Avery?
Exactly. This does not. I didn't even notice that. Oh my god! Like, that's actually pretty sly. I'm not gonna lie. That's actually pretty sly. I had no idea that was her. And it's like, what is this? Is she evil? Is Yara evil? Like, what is this?
Yeah. What's she doing with any of this? It's fine. It just doesn't need to be in here. It's distracting from the story that you're supposed to be setting up. That is Avery and Darren. So Lincoln is in the car with his employee asking for a harsh critique because he wants to do better. The guy just says he's comfortable and respectable, but in an unpredictable and disrespectful city, and those places don't like people like him. A bunch of guys pull up in a van right next to Lincoln's car.
A fucking Hummer.
With stupid little pistols. At least get bazookas.
Yeah, get something. Like,
I was reading this and I was thinking of like the couple of times in Yakuza where vans have pulled up to Kiryu when he's in the taxi, and they got like, here's the bazooka. Oh, here comes a helicopter. Like, just go all out. It's fine. If you're gonna go campy and do this kind of thing, just go the full way.
I know, like, go the full way. Just go all the way. be that person, have that sense of humor. And I guess this must be related to Darren.
Why don't they have SMGs? Again, like you're shooting at this vehicle. At least have SMGs over your stupid little pistols.
Because now that I'm like looking at these guys, these are definitely the 3 bodyguards from the beginning that were with Darren. And I recognize him. And it says the boss sends his regards. I guess Darren's trying to kill him now. And then all of a sudden it's like...
So apparently Lincoln should have killed him in the office instead of saying,
yeah,
hey,
exactly.
Sir, why don't you go?
This is why when you have an enemy and they are a known practitioner of getting even, right? We'll just assume that that's what Darren does. You don't let that walk out the door. You don't let that happen. This is someone who is endangering your employees, your most important employee, and you. Why would you let him walk out of the fucking building just to give him a slap on the wrist and get the hell out, foist him out on his petard, and then he's gone? This would not have happened because nobody seems to respect Darren in the first place, just from what I've seen from that last panel. So do you think they're really going to try to avenge his death if you manage to kill him? No, they're going to scramble to try and get power.
Plus, didn't freaking Lincoln just tell Avery on the phone, BT dubs, Darren's been dealt with?
Yeah, he did, and Darren was not dealt with. But then we saw the scene
where Darren was not dealt with. So what was that?
I don't know. I can't. Like, none of this makes sense.
Does this book not start out with a freaking page talking about continuity?
Yeah, literally, there is a whole thing, canon and continuity. I'd have to read it again, but literally, it's not following its own fucking guidelines.
Oh my gosh!
So and what was the point of showing us Yara?
I don't know. Again, I think that needed to just be kept in the Yara book because there's too much going on that it's not establishing the importance of any of this. And so that storyline, this storyline with Lincoln, is totally random and meaningless.
Oh, I did barely got anything. That's probably why I didn't realize it was Yara, because I was so annoyed with this like random stuff that's like, this has no bearing on this story at all. I could just breeze through it, give like a basic little synopsis on it, and then go on to what was really happening, what I actually did find to be kind of interesting, which is this, what was happening with Avery. This is supposed to be about Avery, not these other people who don't even contribute to his storyline in any way.
Yep. So we've got Lincoln in the car. These guys pull up in the van. There's a very brief car chase where they get away. And then the driver blows his own freaking cover for no reason and pulls the gun out to shoot Lincoln when he has no reason to do that. Wait until you have the advantage, bro. Nothing said blow your cover right now.
Blow your cover, and then like they're driving. Like, I think Lincoln locks this guy in from his seatbelt, unbuckles his, and then rams the car into like a medium. And then Lincoln goes flying out, and you want to know what happens next? We don't fucking know.
Scene change to Avery putting on a gun. Because this book not only likes to start scenes late, but it also likes to blue ball the reader so you don't get the ending.
End them abruptly. There is no release.
So Avery's clipping a gun on when Sam's wife catches Avery on his way out and asks if he's seen Sam since Sam hasn't been home. Avery invites the wife to go with him to Gooding's house, saying that Gooding has info on this. I don't know why Avery would offer this, because
why didn't Avery call her to begin with? Like, see, this is another thing.
Avery should have called her because he got there. Sam wasn't there. He should have, instead of taking a nap, the first thing he should have done would have been, hey, so I got your husband busy right now. He's not going to be home for a little bit, but don't worry about it. Like,
or if you are concerned about Sam, ask to see if he's at home. But I'm guessing because there's a truck outside the building, and I'm going to assume that Avery recognized, because if you look back at the panels, you know, Avery recognized, like, I'm only going to assume that Avery's got to recognize the truck that is sitting outside the security house.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, how would he even know the fact that it was Sam? That is Sam the only one who has a key to the security house? Mm-hmm. Why did he go to the security house to begin with, and not to his own house to take a nap?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that like it feels kind of, when I think about it now, it's like, why would he even bother going to the place where people are working. Unless he wanted to check up on them or whatnot. I don't know what he was going to get there or what. It was just kind of conveniently placed. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's something that I'm noticing, and I'm trying to make this connection, and I'm not making the connection, and it's driving me nuts. But like, I don't know why he didn't call his wife and ask if he was there. But if he knew that he had been taken, then that kind of destroys the idea of him actually giving a damn about his employees and the people that he works with and stuff like that. Or, it's just, he doesn't care. Like, there's no sense of urgent. It's really weird. For a book that has all this stuff going on in it, there is no sense of urgency.
Yep, sometimes it feels like the characters are literally just waiting around for a clock to be like, oh, it's time to go and do that thing now.
Exactly. That's what it feels like.
Avery takes Sam's wife with him to go and see Gooding, and once inside, Gooding tells the wife that Sam is missing and there were beasts inside of the control room. The wife faints immediately. Again, it's asking the question why she was even brought, because she added nothing to the scene. Avery should have literally just called and been like, hey, one, either is your husband home, and then been like, oh, never mind, I forgot I sent him on this thing because he doesn't want to worry her. Or two, just called her and said, hey, I got Sam working on this project. He's not going to be home for a bit. So, like, why was the wife there? Made no difference to anything.
No, it made no difference. I think if it was put in there for this, I mean, it contradicts the idea that anybody cares about Sam, but it's like...
Also, the wife's face looks different in every panel.
Every single shot, it looks different. Like, I don't know what they're going for. Like, middle-aged white woman, old lady, a young, beautiful woman who looks like she's in her 20s. And then she faints, and then, like, she ages dramatically and then digresses. She ages.
Avery and Gooding then go over the creatures that attacked Avery were probably from hell. Also, Gooding's surprised that Avery's already healed up, apparently not due to the ointment that Gooding sold him, because his ointments are not that good. During the Great War of Separation, Gooding then explains that during the Great War of Separation, which I think is when Texas seceded from the country, the demons came out of hell and made moves because opportunism. So
I forgot about that. They made moves. They how?
The demons just came out of hell because they're like, oh, Texas is seceding. Now is our chance.
Yeah, it's our chance.
To do recon on these hell spawns, Gooding sends Avery to go and talk to some random woman an hour out west and get more info. Gooding says things will take him a couple of days to get ready. And so then Avery says he doesn't have time for this. But then he goes home, hits a punching bag, and then takes a day or two off.
It's funny. Yeah, I know. That's what I said.
He's like, Gooding just be like, look, I'm gonna need some time to work this out. Avery, I don't have time for this.
I know.
Goes home, it takes a weekend.
I'm going to take the weekend, even though his ranch foreman is missing. I literally got out of my chair and I was like, he's missing. There are people missing. Someone attacked you. I don't know what happened to the character in the first book who was all, gung-ho to get to Darren. But now that someone's actually attacked his place of business, he's not doing anything. He's just relaxing.
And he just left Sam's wife at Gooding's.
Just left her there too. And then also I think it's hilarious that Gooding's like, well, I've never heard of these creatures before, but I have DNA that, matches the DNA of the demons found whenever Texas receded and the Great War happened. And I'm just like, what is going on? God.
So we get to a McDonald's place at level
castle in the middle of Texas.
It looks fucking stupid.
Castle with a moat and a drawbridge with alligators in the middle of nowhere.
And there are wolves, a crow, a freaking dragon is there.
Wait, we got to get to the funniest part of this fucking book. Okay, let's be real here. This actually made me laugh my ass off. It's basically Avery. He dons his suit, this new and improved suit that looks like his old suit that he had. There's no significance to that. But he's going to the coordinates that Gooding gave him to go and speak with this random woman. And so it goes, all these heroes with their flight and their cool vehicles. I'm in a costume getting around in a truck. Gooding has me in the middle of nowhere with coordinates, but a good truck is a good truck. Just imagine him. All these superheroes have these fancy cars and they can fly and like whatnot, and it's awesome. And then he's just pulling up to the scene in his freaking Ford Ranger. Like,
none of them have the Ford sponsorship, though, no! Avery.
That's clearly like a Ford. I can tell by the way the shape of the fucking like insignia is. I don't know what they call them, but so he's like, he goes, I can't see Jack. Where in, like, I know this is supposed to be West Texas, but where the fuck in West Texas? With the castle. Like, some of the geography of this does not make sense. Like, some of this stuff would be in East Texas. If you're looking for, like, moats and swamps and castles, go towards Louisiana. They got plenty of those.
I don't know why you would go further into the desert, which is to the west. When, the swampland is to the east.
Yeah. Swampland. So, we do have alligators here, though. But then I thought, well, maybe the moat was man-made and she just imported alligators, because we do have alligators in Texas, just not in West Texas, at least not like they are east or south near the Gulf. But I just thought that was ridiculous. Yeah, this fucking Playhouse McDonald's house ass looking fucking
it looks
castle.
So bad.
It does. And there's literally a drawbridge and mountains in the background, clouds. There's this really cheaply drawn effect of fog or mist on the ground, because I'm looking at the picture now and I'm just like, wow, this is really kind of badly drawn and colored, because there's nothing behind this castle. Like, there's just a little bit of mountains, but I feel like there should be something above it. It just feels kind of barren. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're looking at it, it's kind of empty.
The establishing shot from far away, it looks really barren.
Yeah, it does.
It looks like, if you've ever played any games that have like user-generated maps, and they didn't like put in enough assets to make the place look lived in, so you got a bunch of like empty rooms.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like. Is it was just not fully rendered or developed, so
I don't think it was even fully realized either.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I don't feel like it looked like they knew what they wanted to do with this. Like, so I just not like this. The only part that managed to get a chuck on me when he's talking about, I'm just a dude in a truck in a costume. That was great. I wish Avery had like a better sense of humor, because I feel like that would have been a more enjoyable character to read about. But he's very inconsistent with being what we saw in the first to now. But so he crosses the drawbridge, or is crossing the drawbridge, and he makes a comment of the fact that there's a castle smack dab in the middle of Texas. And I'm just like, yeah, I think that's what all of us Texans are probably thinking too as we're reading this. There's a castle in Texas. Wow, I don't believe it. Yeah.
How did I ever overlook a castle in Texas? How did I never notice?
I mean, feasibly, maybe you could build a castle. You know,
I think it would have been more interesting if somebody built it to be either some sort of Texas architecture inspired, or
like the Alamo.
Yeah, if you'd taken an old fort, an old army fort, and made it into your castle, or it was something like, I think it was Wyoming that had that basically junk built castle when we looked at Atlas Obscura. So if the castle was actually very visibly kind of constructed, but I think an old war barracks would have been a cool idea for that.
I think so too. I really do too. Or, it
could have even been a newer built war barracks that was built for the Separation War, and then she took it over after the Separation War, which would have also made sense, considering Gooding earlier said these these hell monkeys came out during the war, and so consider this a military base that was built to fight the hell monkeys back during the separation, because that's when the hell monkeys came out.
But the thing is, have they ever encountered? I don't think they've even ever encountered hell monkeys before. Like, it doesn't specify anything. It's like, oh, these things just turned up after the war, and I'm like, the conveniences of not answering any question, but just tacking on more questions that need answering. But like, anyway, so it just. Yeah, I think that would have been really great if it was like an old war barracks and it looked used, and
that would have given it so much more character than it has
and history
now.
too. Like they talk like this is the first time like we've mentioned like a war, which granted, fine, you don't have to like spill all the tea, so to speak, but at least show a little bit of like the war torn aftermath of what this did in some parts of Texas. Maybe the cities are fine, but these rural parts of Texas were kind of decimated, though they held on strong. And so you have the war barracks. It maybe looks kind of like a ghost town. Maybe that's why Gooding made his services, because everyone kind of doesn't live in these areas anymore. They live more towards the city. I don't even think they're suburbs anymore, because they haven't shown one suburb at all. Like,
imagine how this could have been built. So if you're talking about all these weird creatures came about during the separation, and then possibly there were these little military bases or independently built bases in different places to fight those things back into their clutches at the very least. Yeah. And then they thought that they'd cared for it. So then most of these places became abandoned, but you've still got like the folklore that is around these different places that during the war, these small towns were wiped out by like these beastly creatures. And maybe nobody actually knows if they're real, but it's just folklore from when the war happened, or they're fairy tales from when and rumors from when the war happened. So then that could have actually come into play before the reveal of the actual monkeys, because it was a part of Texas history that went through word of mouth rumor from the war times. And so some people are like, yeah, that existed. And other people were like, no, people were getting delusional and dehydrated from fighting this war and being low on supplies. And we almost didn't get to succeed. Yeah.
It's Texas. It gets really hot, especially in West Texas. Okay. It gets hot in South. I mean, it gets hot in general, but because that's closer to Arizona. That's where the deserts are. So it's going to be hot. Okay. Yeah. And so they're getting delusional, dehydrated, and they think that they're saying these things. That anybody who's been left alive could have been under some sort of delusion of being, let's say, dehydrated. There we go. Dehydrated, heat stroke, so to speak. So they don't know what they're seeing, and they think that it's real, and maybe it is real, but they also don't know how to confirm it.
Yep. So I think that would have been, I think that would have been a really cool thing to build into a later story arc. Like maybe after the initial story arc with Avery, where then you're bringing in the actual hell monkeys and you have more time to actually build out the lore and build out the mystery and introduce more story building elements of the history of this new type of Texas. It all could have built into this mystery and told us more about this world.
Yeah, and I feel like you guys are talking about, because Texas has talked about receding before. Texas would absolutely dominate in receding. I definitely believe that. But I am also a Texan, so I say that because I am bearing my colors true and blue and to the end. I'll die in Texas. It's just, but I really would have liked to have seen more of the world about, like you were mentioning before, about what this would look like. It just feels like there's no effort put into any of that. There's no effort even put into the characters. It'd be one thing if like you kept all that stuff in the background, but the characters kept the story going because the characters were really strong and could do that. But they're not, Instead, we're just kind of, again, left with more questions than answers. Nothing really has been explained at all. Nothing from the first book translated over into the second one. I would have never have guessed in 1,000 years that I would have been introduced to hell monkeys
in the second volume.
In the second volume, I would never have guessed that, because it didn't set that up at all to begin with.
Yep. So getting back on to what's going on with the story, he gets into this castle, and then he runs into this woman named Sydney Bloodruth,
aka Sister Spooky. All right, so Sister Spooky.
She is basically, her powers is like blood magic, and also
I guess blood magic.
The wolves and the crow and the dragon all respond to her, so she's also got some animal whispering that goes on. And the lady says they're going to have to go and investigate the gate of hell that's in a cave down, a mile or two away. But only if Avery can keep up. So she flies away on her dragon, and he holds onto the leg after leaping like 500 feet into the air to grab onto the leg that's flying away from him. They get to the cave and just kick a bunch of hell monkey butts around. No problem at all. Though she gets in some trouble and Avery saves her, they go in to explore and find more of the pit of hell and a holding room. Avery boosts Sydney up to the door, and then she goes through the door while a bunch of hell monkeys go berserk and Avery fights them off. Sydney finds Sam in that hidden room, and he's got all of these weird markings all over his back. The two of them run away from that room while Avery is still fighting the hell monkeys. And then this ends with Avery beating up even more hell monkeys while running away from them.
What are his powers? What does he do? Is he super strong? Because I know that there's a theory right now that he absorbs, or he temporarily can absorb the abilities of other people that he has fought in some capacity. But
which, if that's true, because those hell monkeys exploded in his office.
So yeah, they did.
So that if he is absorbing powers, he could absorb the hell monkeys. But I feel like I need a little more grounding on the rules, since there have been no rules so far. And right now it just seems like it's throwing whatever it wants at you. Like, I could buy him absorbing powers if there was anything that was solidified, but it's not solidifying anything.
No, it's not. It's not solidifying anything. There's no real, what is a permanent ability of Avery's? Because if it is the thing where he can absorb the abilities of other people, but it's only temporary because we don't ever see him using those abilities again. Rogue from X-Men is a really good example of this, where she is a power absorber, but there's a consequence to being able to do that. She drains their energy and then either can put them in a coma or can kill them, but she absorbs a lot of stuff about them. So I'm only going to assume that those, for Avery, they're temporary, but for Rogue, they're permanent. So Rogue is kind of OP, but Avery, I don't know what it is. So it's like, well, are they temporary or are they permanent? Then is he able to, like, did he fight someone who was like really strong and then save those abilities? Or did he just, has he always been that way? Just ripping fences off their hinges and stuff like that? I just don't get it.
And that is where this story ends, is they're escaping the hell monkeys.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm so glad you breezed over all that bullshit that freaking Bloodroof started talking about. I was like, I don't want to fucking talk about this. It doesn't even say anything.
I don't feel like it matters. And I generally will see how much any of that mattered when we get to the third book, whenever that comes out. But nothing so far has mattered. And at this point, because we've got this to compare to book 1, nothing came over from book 1. What's going to come over from book 2?
I don't know.
Probably Gooding. Possibly Bloodroof,
which I would
possibly Sam, because we had some big things in the first book that didn't come into the second book. The whole markings all over Sam's body could actually just completely disappear in the third book.
They could just be scratches and somebody wanted to be decorative. I don't know. But here's the thing, like, I feel like those that not my theory, but what I would like to see come into the next book for Isom, Bloodroof, Sam, Gooding. Those are the only 3 that I want involved with his comic, because they affect his storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Altana. But that really, in some way, like, maybe not even Altana, because like her story's becoming irrelevant. I don't want to see her boss. Her story's
becoming more to do with Lincoln, which feels separate from Jasmine.
Yeah.
Jasmine has nothing to do with anything.
No, Jasmine has nothing to do with anything. Darren, basically, you could just get rid of him. But Darren's plot almost feels like it's more relevant to Lincoln's plot, because it seems like he's does not care about Avery anymore until somebody finds him. But it makes me wonder how long he's gonna, pursue that before he eventually gives up. But those are the only 3 people that I want going into the next issue. I don't want to see Alphacore. I don't want to see Yara, because every time that bitch has been shown has been completely and totally irrelevant. She does nothing. She provides nothing. She just she answers no questions. She doesn't do anything except look pretty. And for some reason, like villainous. I don't know if she's a hero or if she's a villain. I don't want to see these characters in the third issue.
Yeah, I don't want to see anybody in the issue that don't contribute to Avery's story. The book is called Isom. I want a completed story for the Isom character.
I do too. The book is called Isom, not Isom and Friends.
Be introducing me to Isom. These are the first issues for him to establish his character. That's what I want. Not half a book dedicated to 25 different subsets of characters to sell 25 different stories.
Exactly. I don't want that either. I really don't. I, again, will state this again. I think that it's tacky. I think it's tasteless. And you mentioned, I don't know when you mentioned this, but Marvel, DC, and all these comic books are basically shooting themselves in the foot because they are trying to make more money and hemorrhaging that money because the people in charge don't necessarily understand what makes a good story. They just kind of see what is making money and they try to expand on that, right? And so it's like, that's what's the downfall of Marvel. It's not just the stories are bad. It's just there's too much of it. And I think people do get fatigued from these things.
And people get attached to characters and attached to storylines and attached to the values that the characters show, whether it's bravery, whether it's loyalty, whether it's intelligence, whether it's their appearance. Like, you give something solid that gives that character a personality, and that is what makes people coming back. If you force me to buy DLC for your story in order to understand the character, I'm not going to like the character, and it feels like a scam. Because you're not selling me the whole part of the story as itself to make me want to follow along with the character. It's more like a threat of, you will not get the full character unless you continue to purchase this stuff and that stuff over there, and the action figure that comes with a little card with more information on it that I'm not going to tell you anywhere else. And it's gross.
Oh, by the way, speaking of which, I didn't notice this, but there is a little sneak peek of Isom issue 3 where it is the conclusion of the ill-advised arc. I would agree that that is an appropriate name for this arc, the ill-advised arc.
Yeah, it's not what I would do. What I got in here is this book is being too ambitious to start, bringing in too many characters and subplots in order for what?
For more profit. That's it.
That's the big question that I want is, what is the purpose of bringing in all of these subplots and all of these extra things? Is it to tell a better story? Is it to sell more copies of different things? Because if it's to sell more copies for different things, then I'm sorry to say this, but the author is not creating these stories to tell you the stories and respect you, the customer. Is they're seeing you as a thing to purchase all these other things and not giving you a full product or a full story. Because what is the actual functional benefit of doing what this book is doing?
I don't know.
I can't see one. There is no investment in any of these characters. And all of the characters and scenes feel randomly spliced together because half of them are irrelevant.
They are. Like, you know, Darren at this point is very, at least Avery's story is irrelevant now. You know, and that includes Jasmine. Lincoln and Altana, I feel, are irrelevant to his storyline now because whatever's happening out on Silman Ranch is important to Avery. Yara has not been important one time in the books since she has been introduced. Or those two people in the first book, when in the club, do you remember they were in the club and then they were like talking? What was that for? And then I see later in the Discord server the picture of all the comics that were lined up, and there were those two fuckers from the bar or the club in their own comic book. I'm like, what? You're not giving us anything interesting about them in order for me to want to buy the comic to know more. Like, all this stuff is not only just too much, it's not interesting.
Yep, because you're not investing in any of them. And it's obviously somebody, at least I say for me, in observing the content, it looks like somebody who is just injecting stuff to sell more stuff. It is not done for the purpose of telling a good story.
No, it's not. Not at all.
And you can do these big universes with multiple references to things, but you also have to be able to tell an independent story with these other stories or other characters off to the side as just side references so people can enjoy Avery's story without having to read 15 other things.
Exactly. And I wouldn't want that for Avery. I feel like that's actually kind of disrespectful to Avery.
I agree.
Actually, I think so. I think it's disrespectful to his character. I don't like that. I don't like that there's all these different plot lines going on that disservice him, do a disservice to him. I want to be interested in him. I want to see where he goes. I don't care about all these other people because we don't see what happens to them at the end of these things that get shown. There's no conclusion to it. It's just left up in the air, and I doubt that they will carry over anywhere.
Yep.
Like, I just doubt it. Like, the whole scene with Alphacore was completely pointless.
And considering they have their own comic already lined up to come out, like, why are you bothering to inject stupid side stories with Alphacore?
I agree.
Just let them be their own thing. Either let them fly in when they fly in, like in the first comic, so that they can just be references wherever, you know, because they live within the same universe. So let them be references in moments where it matters with Avery, and then just go away. Yeah. Don't insert random scenes that have these people that don't do anything for the story that is Avery's story.
Yeah. Like, if you want to have in the Alphacore thing, just maybe they're popular. Have them on posters. Have them be like people who are like hiring exceps, recruiting exceps to join their cause. But we don't even really know what Alphacore does. We don't know if they're a force for good, if they're sanctioned by the government, what's the government situation like since Texas receded from the rest of the United States. Like, there's nothing that is even remotely explored that could be explored through these characters. But the problem is, I sincerely doubt that they will be explored. But it's just, again, like you said, just a ploy to get people to buy the other books. And I think that that's terrible.
And those questions about, like, what is the purpose of an Alphacore and all of this, those questions can and might actually truly be answered in the Alphacore books. Yeah. Which gives a reason for why to not feature them so much in Isom's book, because it's not going to mean anything. They can be side references, like you said, with posters as members of the universe that they exist in next to Avery, but they don't need to have the scenes that they have in Avery's book because they're not going to be explained. And with the exposure that they've been given in Avery's book, then that gets the reader going, well, who are they? What are they? What do they do? And we're not going to get those answers. And it doesn't make me curious enough to go and buy another book because it looks like you're just going to bait me into getting another book and then not telling me what's going on because the book about Isom isn't even telling me what Isom's about.
No, it's not. Exactly. I do not know what this comic book is about. I don't. It's just about this one guy, if I could say anything, who was dealing with a bunch of bullshit that was ill-advised. Like, that's the perfect title for an arc like that. Ill-advised. Like, then it's talking about some demon lord at the end of these like sections where he must be eliminated. I underestimated this human. What relevance does he even have to you? What is the point of this? Like, there was no setup for that in the beginning of the first book. And the second book, we go even further off into what the fuckville USA. Like, I don't get it.
So some of the other like random things for this I have is like, what is with the naming conventions of this book? Some, like half of them feel they're just difficult to, they don't mean anything and they don't give identity to anything. Names give character and they give culture of things. And so you'd think that there would be some connection maybe to the background, because I know that Eric has discussed the naming convention of Avery. So then it doesn't feel like the other characters have that level of attention.
No.
Because Avery Silverman seems like a normal name and makes sense. Lincoln Usbid is bizarre. Larry Shukai is bizarre. Chadron is bizarre.
Chadron is bizarre. The Alphacore, I think someone was Valdez. Like, that's just their last name, Valdez or something like that. You know, all these names are really, really bizarre. I mean, Sam seems like a normal name. Gooding actually has some weight behind it. I could see, you know, like that has some meaning, but all the other names, no. Sydney Bloodruth, corny, but I mean, it's better than
more character than Lincoln Usbid.
Yeah, it does. Like, I was like, how do you say that? But in Projexis, Club Myrrh, like all these names have no like grounding or relevance to anything. They're just names and they're empty names. That's what it feels like.
Also, the dialogue was often vague, forced, and didn't feel thought out. At least that's how it felt. When you have things like, don't worry about your daughter, I'll send extra guards to the Projexis campus. We'll make sure that she gets transported after her studies. Do you mean
that was weird.
Do you mean after school? And do you
why
mean
not just say after school?
Why not just say, we'll pick her up after school? I got extra security. Like, people in this book talk really weird.
Yeah, it's like, has it been that long since Texas receded that we're starting to talk in different vernaculars? Like, I don't like what's going on?
Yeah, they definitely don't feel like they talk like it.
Like, also, there is no difference in character. Like, no one has their own personality, it feels like. They're all so static.
Lincoln talks just like Darren. Like, they have the same bizarre vernacular and the same bizarre way of talking, and so does Avery.
Yeah. And the rest of the women too.
Bloodruth just freaking talks in exposition.
Yeah. Exposition, all these answers that really don't even answer anything. They just leave me more questions. And it's like, I feel like that it's unfortunate considering the success of this comic really only has everything to do with the fact that it was created by Eric July, and that's it. And there's no, which I think is a good, unless you had more to talk about.
I do.
Okay, go for it. I'm sorry.
There are no solid time markers for pretty much anything. It's all vague. The scene transitions are also bizarre and confusing. The art and the shots for the ranch in Texas, like we talked about the castle already, but the shots of the ranch also looked bizarre, and compared to the first book, the ranch actually looked very different.
It did look very different. It actually looked more like it was in West Texas than it did in the first scene that we saw it. Like, whenever I first saw it, it looked like a fucking concentration camp from a distance. It doesn't look like it's a cow farm or a cattle farm. I don't know what he does on his farm. But yeah, the environment's very strange. Very strange.
Everybody feels like they're wearing plot armor. Like, everyone is toothless. We went into the background with Darren already. We went into the background with Lincoln somewhat. Even the guy that then turns on Lincoln inside of his car. Why does he do that? Yara was toothless and didn't do anything in the first book. All of Alphacore, even in their special scene where they're talking about how they've been this established thing and doing this research, clearly also toothless. They can't do anything. Avery can beat anything that he does. Everybody in this book has plot armor that was just going to fail them at the point where Avery has to beat them. But nobody actually suffers. Like, even when Darren beat Avery in the first book, it just kicked him out. It didn't do anything. He got slammed into a car from like 100 feet in the air or something. Yeah. However far up he was.
Wasn't even the Darren that did it. It was Yara. And that was the only, again, like, really, the characters who were meant to show that they had teeth didn't have teeth. I don't know what is going on.
And so when you built these situations where you've got saying this person is powerful, like the beginning of the first book started out with the police chief being like, she's coming back and we're worried. If you do that, and then you have Alphacore show up, and Alphacore looks toothless and they look incompetent and they're like, we can't stop this, what she's doing. You've just undermined your own power ladder that you've set up.
Yeah.
So then you show that nothing in your story matters. There's no reason for anybody to fear or respect anybody, because everybody is going to be weak at the time the author says to be weak and strong at the time the author says to be strong. But there is no actual weight behind the positioning within the storyline.
No, not at all. Like, I did not feel worried about anything. I didn't feel like there was any tension in any scene at all, because I knew that it was all going to be kind of irrelevant by the time it got to the end.
With Sam being captured by the hell monkeys.
Yeah.
He was just in a freaking room all by himself.
Conveniently still alive.
Yeah, with a bunch of dead bodies around him, but he was alive. So, like, what? He gets also plot armor, and then they all get out of the hell monkeys just fine for no apparent reason, and Avery's not even breaking a sweat. Nobody's breaking a sweat. He explodes. No. Nobody's breaking a sweat. So there's just, like, there's no weight to anything.
No. And the crazy thing is, even in the way that, if you think about it, there's no weight to anything, but think about how Sam was missing for a few days.
Yep.
And that Avery just, loitered around his home and then waited for his super suit to go in to do something about it and go visit Bloodruth. But Sam, by every, every, like, fucking chance in the book, should be dead.
Yep. Or like,
it's been too long.
We already know that Bloodruth has powers, so even just have him have Sam be passed out in that room, and she picks him up, and has to carry him out of the room, or she has to call the freaking dragon to come in and lift him out because he's passed out.
Yeah.
Now he can run around and jump 20 feet in the air along with her. She's using her blood magic to make little platforms of blood to jump across everything. Sam been missing for days, probably not eating, but don't worry, he's fitter than most athletes now anyway.
Yeah, I know, and I felt like Sam's age changed. Like, I felt like he looked older in the first book, and now he's like, kind of looks like he's like kind of a middle-aged man, maybe a little younger than that. His wife certainly has him and his wife have that in common. They changed appearances, like especially his wife. Oh my goodness, like she went from old to young again to old. Like it was weird. So I didn't nothing lined up. It was very strange. It was also really annoying to read.
So the last thing for this is something that changed since we read the first book of this, which was there was a big uproar, as far as I saw, with the community surrounding this, and the question, what was your favorite part of Isom?
Oh man, that is the question of the millennia, apparently, is what was your favorite part of Isom? And normally, you'd think they'd have like I thought this was great about it, or, I really like this. I really like the way it was designed. I thought this panel looked cool. But you know what? No, nobody answered that. Everybody thought it was,
a malicious attack.
Yeah.
On people. So, I am generally a creative channel. I love just creativity. I love storytelling of all sorts, which is why I do video games. It's why I read a bunch of different things. It's why I draw and love visual arts.
Yeah.
I just bask in creativity of generally most kinds because it's what I love. And so when somebody says, hey, what's your favorite part of this thing? Or what characters do you like? Or obviously obviously even what we did today, where we're just talking about the story and different ways that it could have gone or different things that we see. We even do the same thing with our own stories when we're developing our stories. We often take them in different ways. Like we'll discuss something one day and then maybe a week later we'll go, oh, or it could go this way. And this is how these characters will go. And we even have favorite scenes and favorite things about stuff that we haven't even formally written out yet, but will be coming out. So it's not that hard. But the weird thing with the fan base that surrounds Isom is that it doesn't feel, as an outsider, it doesn't feel like a fan base that is created based on a like for the content or for Isom or for the characters. It feels like something else. So then when you ask somebody to talk about the book,
they don't talk about
it. They get aggressive.
They do get aggressive.
I had somebody trying to accuse me of gaslighting them when I was talking about the book.
Yeah, you were literally just asking him, what did you like about it? Like, it's a genuine question. That's what frustrates me, because I saw a clip of, Eric saying that what kind of retarded ass question is that? What kind of weird ass, gay ass question is that, or whatever? To ask what your favorite part of your creation is? What does that mean? Like, that should tell everyone that, like, this person isn't making this stuff in good faith. Of course, I don't know him personally, but the fact that none of them will answer you is ridiculous to me.
Or then get offended with engaging in a conversation, because just because we have a difference of opinion, like different things or dislike different things, does not mean that either of us are being dishonest. And I've had this happen before with other content that I've tried to engage with, where it's, oh, you took it a different way than I did. Well, clearly because you didn't absorb it the same way I did, that you are maliciously reading this. Or I just have a different opinion and I bring a different perspective to the content, so I read it differently. That's the fun in literature and media analysis.
Yeah, and like you could see one thing and I could see another thing. Like, even when you were talking about certain sections, I saw something completely different than you did. And I can say here, like, me and you are reading the Isom comics and we're talking about them. So technically, even if we're talking about them, we're still giving them a fair chance to, maybe some people want to read them too, because you never know. Someone out there might really, really like it. And it's a fair question to ask, what is your favorite part? And the fact that none of them will answer it, they get aggressive about it, indicates to me that either they have not read it or they are absolutely delusional about it and refuse to admit that it has flaws in any capacity.
And this was always my concern. If you go back to a video that I did like a year ago, I think it was before Isom came out, but I came aware of Isom by the political marketing, because all I saw was people saying, oh, it's an anti-woke comic.
That's all I
And
saw
I
people
said,
saying too.
this is a problem to me. I don't like this, because I'm somebody who has always been in the creative community, and I've seen the way that politics has infiltrated the creative community and has made it aggressive and mean towards people just trying to be creative. Like if I go to a critique group, I have politics thrown in my face as to how stuff is written, what you are or are not allowed to write. And the more and more political people come into the spaces and think that arts are a way to commandeer telling people what to do or brainwash people or manipulate people. And there's morality in the things that you choose to write or how you choose to write. Like if you write something this way, then you're obviously condoning it or condemning it, and now you're a bad person for ever writing that thing at all.
Yeah, there is no
it makes
nuance.
it impossible to explore different ideas of different storytelling. And so when you bring these politics in, you make it a hard place for creative to be, to just try things out, because now these identity markers that come with this certain kind of morality are tied to the person.
Yeah, like, I mean, even just recently, you know, speaking of politics, like there's a whole clique of people out there, like if you leave a negative review on their thing, then like you're a hater.
Yep.
You know, and they'll say that you'll like, oh, this person is out here trying to ruin us and ruin you, and you should block them. And then you would ask them, okay, well, who else has this person gone after? Because when I go and see that it's just an Amazon customer and there's nothing else there, I don't know how you know if that's that person. It's just a lie, it feels like, to try and, you know, get, you know, sales, I guess. It's a really good marketing strategy, you know, but I don't really like this. It has made it really hard for genuine creatives to be creative anymore. You have to pick a side, or they make it seem like you have to pick a side, and then they try to claim you if you aren't necessarily status quo or what they think of as being status quo. I don't like that.
And it also turns regular people that are just looking for creative content into a sort of purity testing, because even if you're not outwardly political in any sort of way, people are then reading your content still, or absorbing your content, trying to determine what your politics are to know whether or not they can support you, even when you don't make your content political.
Yeah. Yep, and it's really hard to have a conversation with them too.
Oh, and I'm so sick of the word. I'm so sick of the freaking word good faith review.
I'm so fucking sick of that too, dude. Like I get triggered.
You don't have to like the reviews that you get. You never have to. I have certain things that I kind of mark off of, whether I'm reading somebody else's reviews on someone else's books or my own. There are things that I'm like, okay, this is nonsense, or I just don't care. It's not helpful to me. But to use that phrase to then go after literally everything, because I see it even on stuff that is legitimate criticism. And you could say, well, I don't agree with it. Okay. But going after every single person talking about a story or a movie or a book or whatever with, oh, that's not in good faith. You don't know where that person is coming from.
Yeah, you don't.
But if those fan bases don't really understand that the aggression of going after people from outside of the group, because that's what marketing does. It brings people in who do not know you and your content. So if somebody hears about Eric July's book and comes in and gives it a chance and then comments on it, and then the people immediately jump on attacking that person as bad faith, they came from outside of this cult personality. They don't know what drama is going on. And now the base is actually hurting the author by being this aggressive fighter, when that person, those people just gave it a chance. And now they're like, well, I'm not going to give this a chance anymore, because look at what happened when I did.
This is a way to control the language or dialogue surrounding anything that they like or supposedly like. I actually don't really think a lot of Eric's fans read his comics. I think maybe there's a few of them, but I've seen more people who have had criticisms of Eric or either do not like him, period, talk about his book more than his fans do. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that, but that's another thing that bothers me. It's like you can't just tell people that it's a bad faith review because you're trying to control the situation. That any review that is not a glowing 5 fucking star review is done in bad faith because they just don't like Eric and Eric's politics. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people refuse to be political. They don't want to be. They're tired of it. I'm tired of it. You're tired of it. Like, it's like, I just want to come and talk about books and stories and being creative and drawing. Like, that's what I want. That is when my ass is happiest the most, is when I'm doing that stuff. Politics makes people miserable. Like, it just does. Like, you can see the way it's corroded everybody's fucking ability to have a critical thought in their head, you know. It's like, it's this Pavlovian response to everything. They have been trained to respond to any negative thing that even remotely goes against or says something bad about what Eric July did. They are trained to bark back at you. They don't have, you know, in my opinion, just from what I've seen, they're kind of at a point where they're incapable of really thinking for themselves. That's what it looks like. That's what it comes across like. And they like to, you know, applaud themselves as being like these bastions of, you know, rational thought and factual ability to think and stuff like that. Like, and it's just, no, you're actually just as brainwashed as the people you rail against. You have the exact same type of behavior. You're just using different language. But it's the exact same thing that the people who say you're a racist, sexist, homophobe, to shut you up, you gaslight, you give a bad faith review, and, you know, you're a lefty snowflake loser, whatever they say. It's the same thing.
Well, my final thoughts are, there are a lot, I think, of missed opportunities in this. And for me, it doesn't feel like the creator actually cares about the story or cares about the people who are receiving the story. I know that's what's said in the content of the opening of the book, but it doesn't show in the actual production of the book to me. The book feels rushed. Avery feels disrespected by his own writer, who's not taking the time to tell Avery's story and to give Avery and Darren the respect they deserve to be the characters they need to be, and instead spreading the book between a bunch of different characters and a bunch of different plot lines that do not connect in order to sell more stuff. And so I'm disappointed by all of the potential and all of these different threads that we've discussed, that stuff could be there, but the author is either rushing the content out because he wants to profitize off the situation, or he just doesn't care. Because I don't put it past, this is obviously a novice work. I can read this book and the other book as novice, like where the novice writing is.
Yeah.
But for me, also, when I'm reading this, the number of characters introduced doesn't feel so much as the novice who introduces a bunch of characters because they're so excited to talk about the story and exposit. But it feels more like it's deliberately done in order to sell more stuff.
I would agree with that. My final thoughts, basically what you said, but I don't really have much hope for the third book. I want to give it a chance. I really want to see where it goes. I don't, and I doubt this is going to happen. I really do doubt that this is going to happen. But I don't want to see Yara again. I don't want to see Lincoln. I don't want to see any new characters introduced in the third arc. I don't want to see anybody. I want to focus on Avery or Darren, or both of them, and get, you know, and the only characters that I wanted to see in the next issue would have been Bloodruth and Gooding and Sam. All right, well, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I just don't have a lot of hope for it.
Do you think that any of the main plot lines, or the main plot line for what we were told is the trilogy opening for Isom, will be closed by the end of the next book?
No. I mean, I don't know.
Just your predictions, because I mean, I think it's going to possibly be.
I feel like the whole Jasmine Darren plot line is going to be foisted into another comic, and then we're going to see Avery appear in that other comic, but it's not going to be directly involving him. But we're going to do whatever it is that's happening in Avery's comic right now, which is fighting the devil. I'm going to assume some giant demon monkey king. That's what I think. I think whatever has to do with Darren is going to transfer over into Lincoln's comic if he has one, and it feels like he has one, but I really plot
twist. the demon monkey king at the end of the second book is actually Jasmine's true form.
It's actually Jasmine,
and Darren.
That would be great. I would actually live for that.
Darren is enslaved the monkey hell demons, and then he's going to go and do a siege on Lincoln's high rise with
Darren got into witchcraft and voodoo and stuff. That's how he got his power. He made a pact with the devil.
Yep.
That's all I've got to say about this. This was another turd. Polished turd. That's all it was.
Well, thank you for reading it with me, and thank you for discussing it with me, because the discussions are always fun and always thinking of all of these other places they could go. I am still disappointed by that idea of Darren shooting that guy, and then
I'm so disappointed.
That could have been such a badass scene.
I know, I agree. And then he like pulls out a fucking stogie and puts it in his mouth, and I'm like, get it, Darren, yes, be a badass, please. Like, I want to have a good villain that I'm just like, yes, you're a terrible person, but I love you for it. It's like Melanie Fuller from Carrie and Comfort, like, you're awful, but you're entertaining at the same time. But yeah, I would have really, really liked to see that for Darren. I really want to see things happen for Avery that are good, because I do think it is disrespectful to these characters that I think have a lot that could be possibly going for them, but none of it's ever explored. It's just, crap upon crap upon crap just getting piled on top of crap. Like, that's all it feels like to me.
That said, thank you, everybody. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Have you read Isom 2? Will you read Isom 2? And will you read Isom 3 and its brothers and sisters comics and its cousins comics and its second cousin comics and its third uncle comics and its mother-in-law comics and the
whole family reunion.
Children? Let us know in the comments down below. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?